All right, thanks for sticking with us here on KCTV 5 Plus. It is 7:01 p.m. tonight on your primary election night. I'm Katie Bird here with Sharon Chen. A lot of big races we're tracking both in Missouri and Kansas.
A big night tonight for, Kansas as well as Missouri, obviously, but we have so many big storylines that we are following tonight, for sure tonight, Katie.
Yeah, one thing out in Jackson County, they have been running out of ballots. I want to go ahead and take it over here to our Morgan Rideout. She's at the Holy Spirit Catholic Church in Lee Summit. Morgan, what exactly are you seeing right now?
There are still a lot of voters here. They are still coming out the doors here behind me. A lot of these voters I've spoken to tell me they actually got in line at 5:15. That's what we've heard from multiple people, and they just walked out the door. That's almost 2 hours waiting here at this location. Election board officials confirmed that it's not just here, but Hawthorne Hill Elementary School, they also experienced a shortage of ballots there. Election officials say they are printing more ballots and running them to these locations. We actually saw an elections worker on site here with a batch of ballots in his arm, running them inside in order to get the lines here moving a little bit more. But we are still hearing from people as they're walking out the door that the line, they are just so frustrated at this point. And a lot of them say the ballot, there was a shortage of ballots earlier. Elections officials also say that they've been running ballots to polling locations across town all day long. And they say a big reason is voter turnout. They say more people are showing up to this primary election. They actually printed more ballots than the previous primary election, and that still has not been enough. So, good news for those who are pushing for everyone to have their voice heard. But the opposite side of that, some of these people, they tell us they were encouraged to take a ballot that they didn't want. So the Democratic ballot is what had a shortage. Some of them say they were encouraged to take a Republican ballot or wait in line. They told me they didn't want to take a different ballot. They wanted that Democratic ballot, so they chose to wait, a lot of them with their families here tonight. And we are just kind of talking to them as they leave and just finding out how long they've been here. One woman, when we were pulling in, said she waited for 3 hours. So I don't know when she got in line. We pulled up here around like 6:30. So a lot of frustrated voters out here tonight, but they are getting these final ballots in. The polls closed 3 minutes ago, so no more people being let into the building to vote, but all these people, they still have to get through that line inside. So I think it's going to be a little bit more longer out here at this location. In addition to the ballots, we also think we might have seen that election official here carrying some more machines out here, maybe to help get that line moving a little bit more. But we are working to confirm what exactly they are doing to make sure this kind of gets wrapped up here a little bit soon, guys.
All right, thank you so much, Morgan. Yeah, that is such an interesting storyline tonight, this voter turnout, which we're going to dig into that a little bit more here in a little bit. But thank you so much, Morgan. Certainly a lot at stake on both the Kansas and Missouri side. And we, of course, tonight, we're dedicated to providing you complete coverage as these results roll in, and we are tracking them by the minute, looking at the races that are shaping our streets, taxes, and also leaders too. So let's begin with the Show Me State. Missouri voters in the 4th, 5th, and 6th congressional districts, they are picking party nominees on new lines that were drawn in the state's highly contested mid-decade redistricting. So these maps were passed by the Republican-controlled legislature and significantly altered the Kansas City area district represented by Democratic Representative Emanuel Cleaver.
Yeah. And Missouri statewide ballot, Sharon, it also includes the race for state auditor. Missourians also voted on multiple amendments. You're seeing them right now on your screen, including one that would phase out the state's individual income tax. We'll be diving into this one here shortly. This would be based on revenue growth and others dealing with local government and the initiative petition process. Again, just so much here at stake tonight, and that's one of the reasons we're seeing such high voter turnout, Sharon.
And over on the Kansas side, this is likely bringing a lot of voters out, and that is the governor's race. The governor's race is wide open. Democratic Governor Laura Kelly, she is not going to run again because she's barred by term limits. So we've got 7 Republicans and 3 Democrats that are running for the Kansas governor's seat.
Yeah, and on top of that, voters are also deciding whether Kansas should change the way that it selects Supreme Court justices altogether. So right now, Kansas uses a merit-based process where a screening commission reviews applicants and forwards 3 finalists straight to the governor who will appoint one. But the proposed constitutional amendment would switch to electing justices directly.
Okay, so as you've seen tonight, thousands have showed up at the polls to cast their ballots. But let's take a look at the numbers that we have already. So here's what to keep in mind if you're an early or absentee voter. Now, obviously, the numbers are not in yet. We are tracking them. But in 2024, taking a look back, about 12% of the vote in 2024 the state primary was cast by mail.
Wow.
But in Kansas, those percentages were much higher. In about 2024, they were about 45% of the Democratic primary vote and about 28% of the Republican primary vote. And these were votes that were cast early, in person, or by mail. So
Really good
right now,
information.
yes, I mean, there's just so much information to go through tonight. And to help us get through it right now, we want to go ahead and bring in Sly James, former Kansas City mayor, and also Pete Mundo, host of Mundo's in the Morning. All right, so guys, first thing we want to talk about tonight is, of course, the voter turnout. I believe State Secretary Denny Hoskins, he predicted it to be about 32%. This looks like it's going to go well beyond that. I mean, you got ballots running out, people still in line here. Thoughts?
Well, I hope that there's more than 32%, to be quite honest. The issues on the ballot are quite compelling, and people need to get out and vote. There are a number of things that directly affects their ability to participate in democracy, directly affects their pocketbook. I think Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 are significant issues. The other issues that are there are important as well, but those are 2 very big issues. And without stepping on my friend Pete's toes, the Supreme Court issue in Kansas, I think, is a very interesting one in light of what happened in Michigan, I believe, when they had an election for a Supreme Court judge. And I think $30 million flowed into that campaign. I would like to think that we can keep the judiciary out of the political realm and not mix the two. They should be watchdogs over each other, frankly.
Well, I think that the fact that we've got long lines in Jackson County tells me what I already suspected and many of us did, which is that Amendment 4 and Amendment 5 are going to have a very difficult time tonight.
I think you're right.
I felt that way for weeks. It seems like even many Republican voters did not want to vote to phase out the income tax, which is fascinating when you think about the red state, blue state breakdown. Typically, a blue state has high state income taxes. There's many red states that have no state income tax. Missouri wanted to go down the road of Texas and Florida and Wyoming and some others. And I had a lot of Republican voters call into my show and say, I'm voting no on that. Yep. Whether it was senior citizens who said, I paid income taxes my whole life. Am I at risk of now on a fixed income paying higher sales taxes because of this? So there's a lot of that out there as well. And to think, too, that there's a massive election day Democratic surge tells me these 2 amendments are in massive trouble tonight.
I think you're 100% correct. And I think we need to be careful comparing ourselves to places that don't have an income tax. Texas has oil. Florida has tourism. I mean, Disneyland could pay the income taxes in the state of Missouri by itself, probably. Tennessee has Nashville, big tourist attractions, things that attract taxes from other areas other than sales tax. If the income tax in Missouri is phased out over time, 2 things will happen. Well, 3 things. Sales taxes will go through the roof. Taxes on services will become a thing, and services will be cut dramatically. There's no way to do it otherwise. The idea that they've tried to show that corporations will be taxed at a different rate is ridiculous, considering that the last time they dealt with corporate taxes, they cut them. So are they going to go back now and raise them? Highly doubtful. That's not the Republican mantra to increase taxes on corporations.
And one thing I've thought about, listen, I was a a tepid proponent of it, but for me too, it was like they have blown this budget up a lot the last 5-10 years. They've nearly doubled it in Missouri. So a lot of people are also saying, I know inflation's real and there's a lot of COVID money that was spent the last few years, but that's going to be waning soon. I mean, these surpluses a lot of these states have are going away. So what are you going to do about that? The tourism point's well taken. I just don't get the sense that there's a lot of support for this outside of some groups like Americans for Prosperity, but the money's been overwhelmingly on the no side. And when you see big turnouts in Jackson County, I mean, that tells me this thing is all but fried.
Well, you know what? I live in Platte County now, and when I went to vote at 3 o'clock this afternoon after finishing some work, there were a lot of people there then in Platte County. So I won't limit it to Jackson County, but I think Jackson County is even more specific because of the auditors thing and the property tax controversy that's boiled over there for years. But I think that what we're going to see is a big turnout across the entire state.
Yeah.
And you would know better than me, Sly, but how do you not have enough ballots?
You know, that's an interesting statement and an interesting question, but I have no idea.
I don't get it. I have not heard of any issues yet today on the Kansas side. Pretty big turnout there due to the governor's race that we've talked about a little bit. They've touched on, but I don't understand. Listen, I'm a believer in government wasting more money than it probably should. But can you at least have enough ballots for people on Election Day? I mean, if there's a place to waste money, I don't mind wasting money on too many ballots.
Yeah, I hear you. I think that what they probably did was they looked statistically at what had happened in the past and made an adjustment. Then the adjustment wasn't enough. I think that they failed to take into account the huge interest that people would have in some of the major issues out there. And I also think that they failed to take into account the gerrymandering that took place in Missouri and how that might affect how people felt about voting in this particular primary.
That's a good point as well.
Yeah, you guys pretty much took the question right out of my mouth, is how could this possibly happen? Have we heard of this happening ever before?
Oh, I think I've heard of it before, but never like this. I mean, there have been specific places that have run out of ballots, but this seems to be a systems failure to some extent. Now, I want to be careful.
Hey, Sly,
because-
could you move your mic a little closer
Sure.
to you? Want to make sure we get your audio there.
Oh, generally, I never have a hard time being heard. But I want to refrain from blaming or putting blame because that doesn't get anything done. It's a mistake that happened, and I'm sure that they have a reason for it. But at the end of the day, as long as it gets rectified, it's still not too much to ask of a citizen to spend a little bit more time than normal voting. That's an obligation we have. That's something that we should cherish and something that we should feel happy to have, even if it's inconvenient from time to time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, it's clear that it doesn't matter what side of the issue you stand on. There's plenty of passion that are bringing voters out to get their voices heard. All right, now let's move on to the congressional maps. I mean, we've talked a lot about that here at KCTV5. In fact, it has dominated much of our headlines locally and nationally. So we had some breaking news tonight, which is Missouri Secretary of State is rejecting a bid, that's Denny Hoskins, that is. He's rejecting a bid to put the state's new congressional map to a statewide vote. Now, more than 300,000 signatures were turned into Hoskins' office. 110,000 were needed. Now, Hoskins contends that this petition in general is unconstitutional, and it does not matter if enough signatures were collected here. So the group behind the petition drive, they're already vowing that they're going to take this challenge to court. The new map is already being used in today's primaries, which reshapes Kansas City's districts. So, of course, the seat most impacted here is that of Democratic incumbent Emanuel Cleaver, who has won 11 straight elections. So my question to you is, this is obviously going to turn into a legal battle here. But let's focus in on that more than 300,000 signatures collected. How do you think that aspect will play into court?
I'll let the attorney go first here.
Well, I think it's just part and parcel of the overall pattern of voter suppression and the legislature and electeds imposing their will on voters. This fits right in hand with the redistricting. It is all designed to accomplish that purpose. It also, I think, when you think about the legislation, Amendment 4, that would ban citizens' initiative petitions, they want to ignore citizens in that way. Why wouldn't they ignore citizens in this way? This is the playbook. Do whatever you can to win. That is not democratic. You know, it used to be the voters would elect people. Now the people that are elected are picking the voters that they want to vote for them. That's backwards. It doesn't make sense. It is a deprivation of the citizens' right to select their own representatives. And I'm not in the least bit surprised that Secretary of State Hoskins would do this. He sat on it until this time so that there would be no recourse but to have this primary without putting it up for a vote of the people.
Amendment 4 was convoluted in how it was presented to the people, I would say. So basically, for those watching maybe for the first time, you basically would have to have a majority in all 8 congressional districts to get something like sports betting or marijuana to pass. And frankly, liberal issues or conservative issues would have no chance because the red districts wouldn't vote for something and vice versa on the blue districts.
Right.
So it would have totally made it impossible for anything petition-wise to pass in a ballot. And frankly, Republicans who wanted this, obviously, and they wanted it on an August ballot because they didn't want to mess with November, they really haven't sold it. I mean, I have asked many of the leaders in the state to come on and talk about it and explain it, and there have been a lot of crickets. And that's because I think they know they're in a very difficult spot. This thing has not been well received. It has not been popular. And now they got to figure out what to do about it because there's also a possibility that we get some kind of
all right,
IP
everyone.
initiative petition deal that's going to be on the ballot in November.
Yes.
That could be something. If this thing fails tonight, it's going to be fascinating to see if they can get something on the ballot for November that may, who knows, reverse congressional maps to the way they were. I don't know. But there's a lot that they could do in a short period of time.
Well, the problem with the November IP is that the amount of time that it would take to collect enough signatures and then get the Secretary of State to certify them probably makes that improbable, but there will be some movement to do something. I think the first thing you're going to see is a lawsuit, and this will be at the Supreme Court within a few months.
All right, we want to get to some results real quick before we continue our conversation, gentlemen.
Yeah, so again, Sharice Davids has won the Democratic nomination for the U.S. House in Kansas's 3rd congressional district. And we also have the GOP nomination here, Sharon.
Yes, we do. So this is between Eric Jenkins and Chase LaPorte, and it looks like Eric Jenkins is coming away with 76% of the vote, and this is, as far as looks like, about 34% of the votes that are in.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So before we got to the results here, we were talking about Amendment 4. Pete, you spoke about this. And, for those just tuning in, what this does is, if passed, it changes the rules for citizen-led constitutional amendments. And right now, these pass with a statewide majority. This is how we had marijuana and sports betting. That's how those issues became illegal. So if Amendment 4 passes, the initiative would need majority approval in each of Missouri's 8 congressional districts. Now, supporters are saying that this gives the state an entire voice, while opponents say that this sets the bar too high. Sly and Pete, you guys have already kind of dug into this a little bit here. We already see with the voter turnout, you're saying that this doesn't look good for this particular amendment.
No, I didn't think it looked good before today because the no side was much more enthusiastic than the yes side. And when you have an August ballot, enthusiasm can oftentimes win the day. I think for the Republicans, they figured, hey, we kind of run the state right now. We're going to have some tough primaries. Our voters will turn out in August, and Democratic voters may just stay home across Missouri because of how the state has trended now for the better part of 10 years. But this really drove a lot of enthusiasm on the Democratic side of the aisle. And there are even Republicans. I mean, there are Republicans who smoke pot. There are Republicans who sports bet. That's just a fact. That's how those things got through. It's a state that votes 60-40 for Trump, but then passes sports betting and marijuana. So it's not as black and white or red and blue as maybe some people perceive it to be, and that's why I think this thing's in trouble tonight.
I think that there's one initiative petition issue that I think really kind of drives it, and that's the abortion issue. That was done by initiative petition initially as well, and I think that's one of the pushes behind it. The thing that I think is really interesting about this is that they want to set up a system so that makes it hard for citizens to get done what they want to get done. I'm curious as to why they didn't make it so that any statewide office holder had to be elected by a majority in each county or in each district. If they had done that, then maybe there would be some interesting things. But I think that you're going to see a lot of enthusiasm. I think that the gerrymandering issue has energized Democratic voters across this state and other people who do not believe that that is an appropriate thing to do. Frankly, the best thing that could happen in terms of gerrymandering is that a totally nonpartisan, non-elected group of people make those decisions based on something called common sense. But if you look at the 5th district that goes from someplace north of the river and in Kansas, east of Troost, down to maybe Columbia or someplace, that's ridiculous. That doesn't capture anything except voters that they think will vote in their way. And I think there's a possible danger here. I'm probably hoping and wishing, but I think there's a danger. I think they think that drawing the lines will change how people feel about policies that are being enacted in the state and in this country. I don't think those lines are necessarily going to stop people who hate what's going on from voting the way that they feel just because they're in a different district. I think they will vote with what they believe, the economics and all of those types of things. But it was done in order to ensure victories and maintain power. That is not what should be happening. We should be electing people based on policies and issues, not on power grabs.
I don't disagree. The problem is, I mean, we've got 435 seats in the House. How many are swing districts anymore?
Yeah,
and
right.
I mean that. I mean, and it's this race to the bottom,
Right.
which is where we find ourselves. And everyone can say it started with this state or that state. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
There's a handful. There's maybe 24 legitimate swing districts in the country at this point. So, I don't know how you fix it. You brought up a nonpartisan board. I mean, it sounds good, but is anything nonpartisan? I mean, who appoints the board? How do you find the board? Who are the people on the board? I don't know how you do it.
I would be happy if, again, keeping politics out of the judiciary, I would be very happy if the judiciary would appoint people that they know, or if they just take college professors from every college in the state and say, get together and figure this out. I don't care. But it shouldn't be done by politicians who are doing it for the sole purpose of maintaining their power base. That doesn't do anything for the state. What it does is it keeps people in power to push their own agendas without regard. And then on top of that, they want to stop citizens from pushing any agenda at all.
I know we're trying to figure it out, but if there's one thing I want no part of, it's college professors deciding this stuff, to be honest. Listen, it's an idea. It's an idea. I'll give you that, Sly. But I know where these college professors are at, and I want no part of that.
Well, you know where some college professors are.
Most of them, let's be honest.
No, you know where some of them are.
Oh man, you guys always bring up such interesting perspectives. Hey, we got a lot more to talk about, but right now we want to take a quick break and we'll be back with more.
Unmuted.
Welcome back to KCTV 5 Plus, and this is our election night special. I'm Sharon Chen here alongside with Katie Bird. There she is. Hi,
Yes,
Katie.
hello, hello.
All right, so obviously a big race tonight on the Kansas side is the governor's race, and this particular race bringing a big factor in bringing so many voters out tonight. We've got 7 Republicans and 3 Democrats in this race, and right now we want to take it to KCTV5 Samantha Boring.
Hey Katie, we are here in Wichita on the east side covering the latest for Ty Masterson's race and what exactly is going on with the GOP side. So far, checking out those poll numbers, we have seen Masterson leading in early on, but of course that could always change as the night goes on. But we're seeing a lot of people here so far. Not only is this for Masterson, but also for Ron Estes for U.S. Congress. But like you said, Sharon, there are 7 candidates for the GOP race. Now, those are Ty Masterson, who is endorsed by President Donald Trump, former Kansas Representative and Johnson County Commissioner Charlotte O'Hara, Nick Reinecker from Inman, Stacey Rogers from Wichita, Overland Park Financial Services Executive Philip Sarnecki, and Kansas Insurance Commissioner Vicki Schmidt, as well as Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab. Now, it's a competitive race because something we've seen in Kansas for the last 60 years is a streak that the state has been known to vote in the opposite party from their immediate predecessor. So Laura Kelly, she is a Democrat. We know that she's not able to run due to term limits, so there could be that high possibility of a Republican taking that seat come November. But only time will tell as we watch this primary play out tonight. Katie, Sharon?
Wow, Sammy, thanks so much for walking us through that. I got to ask you, what has the energy been like so far tonight?
Well, Katie, it is a lot of excitement here at the Wichita Cosign Event Center on the east side. We've seen Attorney General Chris Kobach. We're expecting Roger Marshall from the U.S. side, federal U.S. Senator Roger Marshall. We've also seen some state leaders, Dan Hawkins, who's running for insurance commissioner, but we're also expecting to see many more, of course, Ty Masterson, but also a lot of local representatives from Wichita, Sedgwick County, more so out of our area. But right now, people are just excited, a lot of chatting behind me, but we are expecting people to go up and speak depending on what happens with these results tonight.
All right, thank you, Sammy. We will check back in a little bit. Okay, so right now what we want to do is just kind of set this up right now. So again, the Republican race for governor will be the latest test of President Donald Trump's influence in Republican primaries this year. Here's why: because he's endorsed State Senate President Ty Masterson. That's where Sammy was. This is an endorsement over 4 other candidates, and that is former State Representative Charlotte O'Hara, Financial Services Executive Philip Sarnecki, also State Insurance Commissioner Vicki Schmidt, and Kansas Secretary of State Scott Schwab. And also in the other candidates are Nick Reinecker and Stacey Rogers. They kind of round out the top GOP candidates. And then in the Democrat field, we have State Senators Ethan Corson, Cindy Holscher, and also Overland Park Mayor Kurt Skoog. All right, so joining us right now is Dr. Deborah Leiter, and she is going to speak with us about the Kansas governor's race because we've got some interesting perspectives here. So, Dr. Leiter, with Governor Laura Kelly term limited here, how much does this open seat change the political landscape here?
Point out a more important election in any state than the governor, and Kansas is no exception. This is a critical race in determining the direction of Kansas's general political future, and it's also a really important race for what we're going to see in November. This is a really important race. The Kansas governor's election is seen as the most likely turnover for a governor's party in this election. So everyone's paying attention to this election, and whoever the 2 candidates that win tonight are going to have a pretty bruising fight come November.
Yeah, for sure. It looks like right now Ty Masterson is kind of the front runner here. He's gained President Trump's endorsement. But let's talk a little bit about these endorsements, because previously the president endorsed, not only Masterson, but also Chris Kobach as well as Derek Schmidt. Well, they went on to lose their elections. So how much of a weight does a Trump endorsement play here? How much does it actually matter in this governor's race?
Primaries are always really hard for voters because they're choosing between members of the same party. And so people are really looking for important information to make these decisions. And the Kansas governor's race is always an interesting one because we really see that local and state level issues really can matter. And that really played a role in the previous two governor's races. So what we're seeing is a push and pull between Kansas politics and Kansas endorsements and a national level movement. Previous endorsements during this particular primary for President Trump have generally gone pretty well for him. His endorsed candidates have generally been winning, but generally isn't everything. And so that endorsement really brought a lot of attention to Ty Masterson, a lot of donations, meaning that it's his to win, or maybe better said, his to lose. A loss here would be something would bring a lot of attention to the power of President Trump's endorsements. And I think that's one of the other reasons we're seeing so much attention being brought to this Kansas governor's race. This is really a question. How much influence does the president have on these really important but also really localized races?
Yeah, localized races. And you brought up a good point too, which is, this particular office, there's a lot of issues and things that are tied to what voters care about. So what do you see as some of those issues that are really bringing the voters out to cast a vote for the governor?
It is really interesting to see how much issues of economics and affordability and property taxes were a huge part of this race. We saw pretty much every gubernatorial candidate talk about affordability and property taxes specifically. But a really surprisingly important issue, or at least surprising to me, was how much AI and data centers became a big part of this conversation about whether they should be built, where they should be built, and who should decide. And I think that tells us that voters are really concerned with more localized issues than we often expect. That those kinds of issues, along with education, tells us that Kansas voters do care about Kansas and Kansas issues.
And what about locally here? I mean, let's get hyper-local for
sure.
a minute, because a big one in Kansas City, of course, is the future of Chiefs, the possible future of Chiefs Stadium in Wyandotte County.
100%. It is something that has come up a lot. It's I sometimes joke that I now have to be a politics expert and a sports expert, and I never expected that. The big conversation is both how do you get the Chiefs, but also who should get to decide, and what kind of economic and social value do they bring? And the different candidates have really focused on that question. I think that there was sort of an initial assumption that everyone would be sort of gung-ho, enthusiastic to bring the Chiefs in, but from issues relating as hyperlocal as where am I going to park?
Yeah.
What's this going to happen to traffic? To how much economic value do the Chiefs bring? We really see that this is dividing voters who are going to have to live with a new stadium. And so it is surprising how much people have really clicked into this question of what values does this negotiation bring and what's the process for it? So we really see this has become a surprisingly salient issue.
Yeah, and you talk about, not surprising issues, but big issues. Obviously, Chiefs is a big one for us here locally, but looking statewide and also here locally for that matter is educational funding. That is a huge question here in Kansas. And you see with this large array of candidates here, their perspectives are very different, ranging from those who completely support funding education more to creative ideas from like candidate Cindy Holscher, who says we should legalize marijuana to pay for education. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Kansas is an interesting case because in the Kansas Constitution, the full funding of education is required. This is a interesting, if not totally unique, a pretty unique lock. But what that really means is somewhat open to interpretation. In fact, actually, some folks are arguing that part of the reason that Kansas is considering changing its judicial selection is down to that question of the interpretation of the Kansas Constitution for education funding. States and local areas play such a huge role in deciding what education is, how it should be funded, that this really matters. And while some parts of Kansas have incredibly excellent records in education, other places are falling behind. In a larger question that we're seeing across the United States about who should control education, who should have access, and I really think that that is really playing out in these local elections. And I think that's a really great sign that people understand how important the state is for making these decisions. And we can absolutely say that the candidates are providing very different visions about what that looks like. So that is, I think, a really good sign that voters are paying a lot of attention.
Yeah, and I think that's also, to me, it seems like that would be indicated in the voter turnout that we're seeing tonight, too, that they know that they have a voice, they have a true voice in the smaller elections here.
The turnout's been remarkable. It is, we expected a somewhat high turnout election, and it is shocking. The early vote turnout, we're seeing, thousands and thousands of more people turning out in this election than we were expecting. And it's really a sign that people understand that these candidates chosen here, along with the issues on the ballots, are going to matter come November. So voters are up and revved. And if this is the primary election turnout, I can't imagine what the general election turnout is going to be. It's, prep early, get to the polling place early, because I think we're going to have a lot of lines come November.
Yeah, it's funny because I did look up right before we came out here. The usual primary turnout in the U.S. is between about 15 to 25%, which seems really low in the grand scheme of things. And so our numbers tonight could be well beyond that.
It is amazing. And it's especially amazing in a place like Kansas that because you have closed primaries, you have to be a registered partisan to vote in them. A lot of times independents don't turn out to vote. Now, some of that's the issues on the ballot, but I think it's also just people are really, really primed and ready to go to express their preferences. And I think we're also seeing that in just how stark the differences are, even within the parties, right? The sort of perspective on Kansas that even the different Republican candidates have proposed and the different Democratic candidates proposed, these are really different visions, and voters are ready to show what they care about.
Yeah, it certainly does seem like it. All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Leiter. All right. So, we want to kind of go back to the governor's race right now. And our Chandler Watkins, she is at Cindy Holscher's watch party. And so, Chandler, can you hear us? How's it going out there?
Yeah, it is very loud here. They're playing some good music, in my opinion, and people are just vibing right now. It's a very good atmosphere. People have their Cindy Holscher shirts on. They have some ribbons that they're twirling around, and people are just sitting here watching the results as they roll in. Now, a little bit about Holscher. She has been in Kansas politics for a decade now, first winning the Kansas House District 16 against an incumbent Republican. Now, over the course of her campaign, she has called for a moratorium on new data centers in Kansas, which has been a topic of conversation for many over the last few months. She's prided herself on not being tied to any special interest groups over the course of her campaign, and she's looking to make life more affordable for Kansans. Now, KCTV5 had the opportunity to interview all three Democratic candidates for Kansas governor. We talked to her about a variety of things, including how she would tackle affordability for Kansans. She told us that over the course of her campaign, she's been going around talking to Kansans across the state, and she said property taxes and access to affordable health care were consistently brought up as the biggest issues that Kansans that she spoke to are facing at the moment. Now, she says she would like to expand Medicaid, which would help with rural health care. And she says that she would like to get the legislature to fund education, which affects property taxes. And that's also been a major talking point here in Johnson County, as three of our largest school districts are looking to sue the state over special education funding. Now, those are just some of the issues that Holscher has campaigned on. And talking with her team, they tell us that she will not be taking the stage until results are called. But at last check, it looked like she was in the lead by a little less than 2,000 votes, right ahead of Ethan Corson, her fellow state senator. So we'll continue to keep you updated as those results roll in.
Yeah, Chandler, something that has been so surprising on this side of the race for the Democratic nomination, the Kansas governor's race, really is pollsters' approval ratings, even though she does not have Governor Laura Kelly's endorsement. One of her big pushes is to get marijuana legalized in the Sunflower State. Sharon, we appreciate your Chandler, we appreciate you breaking all of this down for us here on KCTV 5 Plus. All right, I want to talk a little bit more about the Kansas governor's race because so much is at stake here, Sharon.
Yeah, we really do have a lot at stake for the Kansas governor's race. Now, we talked about the three Democratic candidates, and again, this is a very, very crowded field for the Republicans too. If we can go ahead and bring back in Dr. Leiter here. So Dr. Leiter, you're talking about 7 candidates for running for the Republican ticket for the governor. So how do they stand out here? I mean, this is a very crowded field.
It's an incredibly crowded field, and it's one of the things that we always look at is how competitive is the race going to be, is how many folks turn out. And so the fact that there are so many Republicans running tells us that the Republicans, one, do have an advantage going into this election. But the really key thing, I think, is that these different candidates are in some ways kind of competing in different lanes. We have Ty Masterson is appealing on a sort of insider Republican Kansas expertise, still appealing to President Trump. We have folks like Philip Sarnecki, who's really running as the outsider candidate. And then, interestingly, I think we have a lot of candidates trying to run in that moderate middle, especially the candidates from that kind of the Johnson County area, who are trying to send an appeal of more of a general moderated Republican stance. And I think this makes sense when we look at the Kansas Republican Party, which is, I think, a lot more interesting and divided than people often think. I think we tend to think we've got the Democrats, we have the Republicans, they're all the same. But in fact, actually, Kansas politics and Kansas Republican politics have always been divided between sort of a more moderated Republicans, more far-right Republicans, rural Republicans, urban Republicans, and we are seeing that play out with all of these different candidates. Each one is trying to make a different claim about not just Kansas, but what the Republican Party in Kansas is. And I think that's part of the reason we see so many different candidates running. It's not just that the Republican candidate has a good chance of winning in November. It's also that there are a lot of questions in both the Democratic, but especially the Republican Party about what does this party really stand for, especially for Kansans.
And, which brings us to this question, too. You have all of these candidates, but you're looking at a state that has, a very, very long history of electing governors from the opposite party, the Democratic Party here for, recently. So really, when you look at this, how does this shape up for them? What is the likelihood that they would beat that streak?
It's with elections, it's always hard to say what's going to happen until we have the results. But I think that when we try to make estimations about who's going to win in primaries, but also who's going to win in November, we look at a lot of different things. So one of the things we look at is the presidential vote share in the previous election. And Kansas very clearly went to the Republican Party. Trump wins by a pretty wide margin. And so very often that's the reason that we say this is an election where we're likely to see a transition from one party to the other. At the same time, the reason that Kansas is so interesting and so much fun to study is that Kansas really cares about Kansas issues too. That was a key part of Laura Kelly's success is localized issues. And so what I think we're really going to see, and the reason that this is such an interesting race to watch, is that it is going to be a question of voter satisfaction with the current governor and the current governor's sort of perspective versus satisfaction with national government versus partisanship, right? All of these things are kind of wrapped together. And that's why, even though we think that this is one of the potential sort of changes in party control, it's no sure thing. I think betting markets have it at 25% chance, which is much higher than we would usually guess for a state that went so clearly in one direction in the previous presidential election.
It's so interesting. I mean, now we're betting on politics. Whoever thought that we would come to that point, right?
Who knew that sports betting would lead to this, right?
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us for our election special tonight, Dr. Leiner. We're not done with you yet. You can't leave, but we are going to take a quick little break here.
All right. Thanks for sticking with us here on KCTV 5+. I'm Katie Bird here with Sharon Chen on your primary election night. Sharon, so much that we're watching both on the Kansas and Missouri side here.
So much at stake tonight, Katie, and we are seeing it in the voter turnout. The voter turnout has been amazing, not just on one side of the state, both sides of the state line. In fact, we've had some precincts tell us that they've run out of ballots.
Wow.
An unprecedented development. Certainly, we didn't expect it tonight, but we have been watching all of these races closely for you. We're tracking everything minute by minute.
Yes.
And so you can keep it tuned to us tonight because we're going to walk you through everything, including this right now, which we want to dig into, is the Kansas U.S. Senate race. This is Roger Marshall's seat. He is running for a second term, and he does have President Trump's endorsement. Marshall won his 2020 primary with about 40% of the vote. So his challengers, a very crowded field here as you're looking at it. You have the Republican challenger Pond Naramore from Lawrence. And then also on the Democratic side, now this is where it gets really crowded.
Yeah.
You've got 11 candidates vying for this position. And so far, polling shows Methodist megachurch pastor, you see him right there, Adam Hamilton. He's one of the front runners. The other is KCK real estate developer and entrepreneur Eric Murray. So right now what we want to do is we want to go to our Betsy Webster. She is at Limitless Brewing in Lenexa at a watch party for Adam Hamilton. Betsy, kind of set up the vibe for us. How's it going out there?
Oh, well, we've got quite a crowd here. We're at Limitless Brewing, and you can see all the people here in the front area lining up to get themselves some libations. The patio is also full, and as you see, the bar area filling up as well. As you mentioned, 11 candidates on the Democrat ticket. And, you know, Hamilton has clearly been the most visible of all of them with advertising that was afforded by what is much more campaign funding than his opponents. We checked the latest Federal Election Commission filing, which is current as of 3 weeks ago, and it shows he's raised $4.1 million. Now, Hamilton's also well known in the Kansas City area as the founder and pastor of Church of the Resurrection, which, if you don't know, it's grown to become the largest Methodist congregation in the U.S. Now, I watched all of his ads to get a sense of some of the things he's campaigning on. One is making essential goods and health care affordable. Another is fighting against the current norm in Washington, which he describes as, I'm going to check my notes here for the quote, chaos and corruption. And another is bringing back what he calls, quote, decency. That's been a big part of his campaign, focusing not just on the issues, but the tone of the campaign. And the winner of this Democratic primary is going to likely be facing incumbent Republican U.S. Senator Roger Marshall. He does have a challenger on the ballot, but right now he's very far ahead. There hasn't been a lot of active campaigning from his challenger. Reporting live here in Lenexa, Betsy Webster, KCTV 5 News.
Yeah, Betsy, you brought up the campaign fundraising. I think last I checked, it was at 3.6 million, and now it's 4.1. That is significantly more than what I had there. So certainly he is getting a lot of support from the community there.
Yeah, Betsy, again, thanks so much for bringing the live report. We can hear the music. We can feel the energy from that watch party there. I actually want to go ahead and take it over to our live results here. So again, estimated a little under 40% of the votes here on your Tuesday night. Adam Hamilton is collecting about 44% of the total votes. And again, only 40% of the total votes are in. But again, he is definitely leading this race.
Yeah, showing
strongly.
that he's ahead here with 44% of the votes. But yeah, he certainly, as we said, you know, he is the front runner in the race, one of two, and he has been getting some significant fundraising here. Again, what Betsy said, $4.1 million for this campaign here.
Yeah, there is another race I want to quickly check in on. It's one that Kansans have really been keeping a close eye on. This is the Democratic race for Kansas governor nominee. Take a look at this. Cindy Holscher, Ethan Corson are neck and neck right now, just about 8 o'clock.
Look at that. Just 2% difference between the votes here. I mean, this is 37% of the votes in, but this is certainly neck and neck for sure.
Yeah, let's go ahead and take it over to the Republican side. All right, not as close, but again, Ty Masterson is taking the lead with 40% of the total votes, only 21.6% reporting. You know, you always get a good adrenaline rush on election at night, Sharon, I've got to say, especially when those results start coming in.
Yeah, it's always fun to watch these numbers roll in, especially with the Masterson being ahead. And you can see there Philip Sarnecki close in behind. And again, as far as fundraising goes, he was another one to bring in quite a bit of funding to, you know, back his campaign up here.
Yeah, Sharon, we have 3 expert analysts in the house. We have Pete Mundo, Dr. Deborah Leiter, and Sly James. We're going to go on a quick break and then bring Sly and Pete back in the house to break down more of these races. We'll be back here soon. Sharon, whenever you're ready.
Welcome back to KCTV 5 Plus, our election special tonight. And boy, we've got a big night here tonight. Joining me tonight, I'm Sharon Chen, by the way. And joining me tonight is former Kansas City Mayor Sly James. And we also got Pete Mundo, radio show host of Mundo in the Mornings. All right, guys, we are starting to see some results coming in here. So let's go through those numbers real quick. And then we've got lots of questions for you. So, okay, first we want to get to the Kansas City U.S. Senate race. And what we're seeing right now, this is breaking news. They've called it for Adam Hamilton. He's got 44% of the vote, and it's estimated about 40% of the votes are in. But they've called this race. He is projected to be the winner. Now, the other race that we've got results is Kansas State, U.S. Senate. This is also GOP for Roger Marshall's seat. He is also projected to be the winner with 73% of the votes, and this is only 21% of the votes coming in, but he is also projected to be the winner. And the other race we are following, let's see, as we get to it here.
Give me just a second. Sorry about that. All right, here we go.
Yes, the Kansas governor race, Ty Masterson. He is backed by President Trump. He's already projected to be the winner with 40% of the vote. Again, here, 22% of the vote in. And on the Democratic side, we've got, as the front runner, Cindy Holscher with 45% of the votes, 37% of the votes in. All right, so first let's talk about the governor's race here. Thoughts on what we're seeing here?
Well, Ty Masterson had everybody lined up in support of him. Not just President Trump, Kansans for Life, which has a lot of pull with grassroots Republicans, and then also factor in Americans for Prosperity. Koch brothers still a lot of sway, especially in Kansas. So those big three all lined up behind Ty Masterson, and it was going to be very difficult. The thing that made it interesting to me is that President Trump's endorsement has been solid in Republican primaries, but the one place where it hasn't been always rock solid is in governor's races, because many voters feel like they know their state better than Washington, D.C. does. President Trump has lost primaries in governor's races in Iowa, in Oklahoma, and in Georgia. So I was intrigued to see if maybe that was going to play out in Kansas, but it looks like just too many of the big establishment folks lined up behind him, and there were also 7 people in the race. So you get to 30, 35, he might be at 40% when all is said and done. You're going to win this thing, Sly.
I agree with you. I think that's very interesting that you pointed out the difference between his support in the governor's races versus the Senate and congressional races, where there's a direct line in the federal system. It's going to be interesting to see how this faces off, though, in the general. I have a bias. I happen to like women being in positions of power, particularly at that level. There's something more organized about women. That's why they take good care of us to make sure that we do what we need to do. But I think women have a different perspective and a softer perspective, but are strong in what they do. So I'd like to see a woman win this office again, to be quite honest with you.
Well, but here's what's interesting. The woman in the race on the Democratic side, Cindy Holscher, is the most liberal candidate in that race. Ethan Corson, endorsed by Laura Kelly, kind of staying in that more moderate lane. So I think that if you're Ty Masterson at this point, you probably want Cindy Holscher. She's considered the most progressive of the three. Ethan Corson, with the Laura Kelly backing and the Laura Kelly power system behind her, I think could be tougher for Ty Masterson, because as good as the Trump thing is in a primary, it could hurt him come a general. We don't know what the world's going to look like, what gas prices are going to be in November, but it does look like there's big Democratic enthusiasm right now and progressive enthusiasm in Kansas and Missouri, because I was thinking about it. We were in the break room, Sly. This is, listen, we see this all the time in politics. The party out of power is very energized.
Right.
But this is the first big election in either of our two states since 24.
Right. That's
so
exactly
the
right.
Democratic voters been sitting there for 18 months, and this is their chance, and November is their next chance, and it should be a warning sign for the Republicans to some extent.
I think there's another thing, too, that needs to be taken into account. There's the battle between Democrats and Republicans, and then there's the battle between moderate Democrats and progressive Democrats. And the progressive Democrats are bringing a lot of energy,
Sly, could
of
you move
energy
your
and
mic a
younger
little
people.
closer to you? So
One more
sorry
time,
about
sorry.
that.
Yeah, but they're bringing a lot of energy to the floor, and I think that's something that we're going to see across the nation. I think that's going to be something that we see in Colorado and in other places coming up. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out in the general.
If the progressive wins tonight, Cindy Holscher, a lot of people too are going to blame Overland Park Mayor Kurt Skoog because those are moderate voters who would have gone to Ethan Corson, and he may play spoiler in this whole thing. And frankly, no one saw anything from Kurt Skoog the last couple of weeks. No mailers, no real notable commercials, nothing.
Yeah.
And he may just play spoiler for the moderate candidate that Laura Kelly got behind months ago. I mean, that could lead to some... You don't see a lot of infighting in the Kansas Democratic Party. Usually they're just, they get in a row, much
Right.
more so than the Republicans. They may have their own infighting right now, depending on how this plays out tonight.
I think you're right. It's going to be interesting to watch how this all plays out over time.
It is. It is.
It certainly is. And, I had asked Dr. Leiter this too, with Governor Laura Kelly being term limited here, how does this open seat change the political landscape here in Kansas?
Well, Kansas has gone back and forth for a generation now. I mean, you've gone from Sebelius to Brownback to Laura Kelly. I mean, Kansas is one of the few states left, it feels like, that does kind of ebb and flow depending on where the winds are in the country. So, listen, if anyone can pull it off, one thing Republicans are right to do is respect Laura Kelly's ability to win a race.
Right.
What I don't know is whether or not her endorsement carries the same amount of enthusiasm for her voter base without her on the ballot.
I think that's true, and we'll see. I don't know enough about the Kansas Democratic machinations to be able to speak intelligently about it. I'll leave that to you. But looking at it from afar, I think that's exactly right. Now that the more moderate Democrat is not in the race, will they unite behind the progressive? That will be interesting to see. I think they will, because I think that there is this movement that is kind of shaking things up. The big tent party is trying to figure out which side of the tent they're going to be on, but I think they all still want to be in the tent.
Well, too, yeah. And if the Republicans had maybe gone with someone other than Masterson, maybe then you see some of the more moderate Democrats cross the aisle. But, that's not going to happen.
It's
now.
a clear choice.
Yes, it is.
It's black and white.
I think Democrats would come home to the progressive candidate in Kansas.
Yep.
That would just be my hunch. Because if nothing else, they would say to themselves, listen, the legislature is still going to be red.
Yeah.
So we'll at least roll the dice with a split system or split government in Topeka, even if we don't love someone who's far to the left. Because the reality is, a lot of her progressive stuff won't go anywhere anyway.
Yeah, exactly. And there needs to be some balance someplace. You don't want it tilting one way or the other. I think Missouri is a prime example of that. It's gone so far in one direction that there really is no balance, and that's very frustrating and I think causes some problems.
Yeah, Kansas, one of the few places that still has a semblance of this kind of split government, which is
I
unusual.
grew up in an era where Missouri was the more liberal state and Kansas was the more conservative, and it's flipped.
Well, was
It's
it
your
liberal
fault.
or was it just Republican Democrat?
Liberal in terms of Democrat versus
Yeah.
Republican. But back then, Democrats and Republicans are not the same as Democrats and
Well,
Republicans today.
That's a good point. Good point.
So, let's put political parties aside. When you talk about the Kansas voter and this particular office here, governor of the state, what do you think are the most important issues that play to voters as they go to the ballot box this evening?
The most important issue to voters in any place, Kansas, Missouri, Washington, wherever, is about economics and how they're going to make a living and their economic future and the future of their children. I think that crosses everything. Everything. The hierarchy of needs is very clear, I think, in public discourse now, and that's what's called affordability. I think it's a little more sophisticated than simply saying that. But if you want to use a term for it, affordability is the single most important issue to the American voter, I believe, at this point.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, what a state can do is I don't want to say it's limited, but it's different, right? And Kansas and Missouri, the big topic is property taxes. Jackson County, same thing on the Kansas side with Johnson County. That's come up in both primaries. What are you going to do about property taxes? Right. At the federal level, obviously, that's more of an inflation conversation, what's causing gas prices to go up. But on the state level, it's okay. What are we doing? Kansas did something under Laura Kelly that was very popular across the board, and was bipartisan. They cut the sales tax on groceries a couple of years ago.
Smart move.
It was a smart move. It was a win for everybody. What are those next steps? I think Kansas is in a tough spot right now because of their boneheaded Chiefs deal. They're going to talk about how we need to cut property taxes, but they are about to literally gift billions of dollars to the Chiefs over decades to help pay off the stadium, while at the same time not having them pay any property taxes there. So they've got, I mean, it's considered the greatest, I mean, I consider it the worst deal, but the greatest deal for a team in the history of subsidies. And they have now carved up this bizarre Star Bond district that includes half of Johnson County, their most populated and prosperous county. I don't know how they're going to cut anything with what's going to be a likely big hole in the budget for at least 10 to 15 years.
And not only the Johnson counties carve up, but the Wyandotte County basically imprisonment on the issue, I think, is an important issue. They have treated Wyandotte County in a way that has angered the leadership in Wyandotte County, the commissioners in Wyandotte County, and the people in Wyandotte County, because essentially they get nothing out of the deal.
Correct.
And no voice in the operations.
Yes, and there have been, I mean, you know, threats behind the scenes.
Yes.
You know, play ball or else you're not getting a seat on the commission.
Exactly.
It has been ugly. And that also, you know, Laura Kelly and Ty Masterson were together on that deal. Very strange how that was bipartisan. And there's been major blowback in Wyandotte County and major blowback in parts of Johnson County.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that the whole Chiefs thing is going to be so interesting to see how that plays out in this particular office, especially here locally for sure. Right now, we want to kind of look at some of these other races too. So Kansas U.S. Senate, Roger Marshall's seat, he's, you know, pretty much been called the winner here with 74% of the vote. This is a surprise, no surprise?
He's the incumbent.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know the other guy. I don't think most people do. But what that really is a vote against Marshall. That's kind of mildly interesting that 24% of Republicans just said, I'll vote for Joe Schmo because I'm maybe not happy with Roger Marshall. Maybe that's a high number, but that was always a done deal.
Well, you know, I think anytime you're talking about a senator, you have to look at what's going on the national scene. And there's a lot of people, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, non-voters, who are not happy with what's going on across the country and on various levels for various issues. So some of that's probably bleeding into it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We got a big one here. Amendment 4 on the Missouri side with just 15% of the votes in. It is 82% no. Surprised? Not surprised? What do we think here?
Listen, I thought, and maybe it comes back. I figured 60-40 no. But that's an absolute butt kicking.
Yeah, this is kind of like, I don't know. There's some things that you could say but probably shouldn't on the air. But
we're not on broadcast TV, so you can say whatever you want.
Hey.
Well, in my
Hey, let's
neighborhood,
keep
they
it
call that a
family
big old ass whooping.
Let's take it to Amendment 5 now.
Amendment 5. So this looks like it's at 83% no, with 15% of the votes in here. This one also pretty much voters have spoken that they do not want this individual income tax eliminated here.
Yeah, same thing. I figured 60-40. If it holds at 80-20, that is a flat out. I mean, these are both flat out embarrassments, is what they are.
Yeah, and I have to. Wow, it's moved even higher. I have to think about the fact and remember the fact that where we are sitting is not necessarily representative of the entire state. But I'd be willing to bet that St. Louis is probably in the same boat. What's happening outstate, who knows? But this indicates to me at such a high level that it's going to pass flying colors across the entire state.
Yeah, I mean, I think outstate Missouri, like I said, I don't think it was a slam dunk yes there either.
Nobody.
I don't. I think this thing was as poorly sold to the people as it could have been sold.
Well, and this is one of the things that kind of makes me a little bit angry. Our legislature spent a whole lot of time, effort, and money on putting forth these dead bang losers, as if that just shows how tone deaf they are to the people that they represent. Just absolutely tone deaf.
But doesn't it at the same point, listen, obviously you're not a proponent of it. I was tepidly, thinking it could be a good thing long term if it was tied to making sure you were meeting revenue goals. But at the same point, from your perspective, I feel like this is a good thing going forward because they're not going to go back to this well. They can't,
yeah.
at least not for a while.
Well, I would imagine if they do, they're going to have to package it as something totally different than that and sneak it in under the cover of darkness and to surprise people. But this thing is about as dead can be.
But you know what's weird to me, and I just thought about this. Under Governor Parson, they had lowered the state income tax like 1/4 of a point, right? They did that a couple times.
Yeah.
And I forget what exactly that was tied to, but there were some minor decreases. It doesn't really move the needle in any big way for a state, but they had ticked down the state income tax rate a hair under Mike Parsons. So I don't know why they thought they had to go all in on this or why they couldn't just keep bringing it down a little bit.
I don't know either, but I think it's one of those mantras that somehow they think that no taxes means that business will just flock in and will take care of everything. And I don't think that's the case at all.
Well, and by the way, we haven't touched on this, but how much, and this would not have been the same project in the same way they rolled it out, but how much does the Brownback deal from 10 years ago reside in the memories of Missourians?
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't going to be like that. They weren't going to go to zero and just pray. But a lot of people in Missouri saw that, remember that, and say, we don't want to go down that road.
Well, not only that, but look at Alaska. Alaska is now in such a bad situation with their no-income tax deal that teachers that work there cannot get health insurance or pensions.
Did not know that.
Yeah, that's a pretty sad state of affairs when you can't even afford to pay.
So they went the Kansas route, just slashed to
pretty
zero?
much, and it just went straight down the tubes.
Wow. Yeah, you got to have a plan.
Okay, so right now we want to go ahead and take it to, looks like somebody.
We are out in Jefferson City. Amendment 4 and 5, watch parties. Want to go ahead and take it over to there as they are officially considered called.
5 have been buried so deep in citizen rejection, they should never come back. Citizen-led, voter-approved constitutional taxpayer protections have been strongly defended and reaffirmed by the people of Missouri. And our fellow Missourians sent a powerful message to Jefferson City. The people are in charge. The majority rules. And every citizen's vote counts equally. Woo! This election proved that our Constitution works, and the 25,000 Missouri realtors and our coalition partners are proud and honored to have led the defense of our Constitution and the protection of Missouri taxpayers. When our constitutional protections and the 118-year-old Citizens Initiative process were threatened, realtors stood up. And with thousands of coalition partners, including many who are here with us tonight, we organized in every community. Realtors endured threats, abuse, and misinformation. And we stood tall and strong together. Woo! The governor and the legislature gave the people the opportunity to decide these matters at the ballot box. The people have responded in a resounding way that is crystal clear. Missouri realtors do not consider this either a partisan victory or a defeat for any person or institution. The winners are the citizens of Missouri. Missouri realtors have shown our strength of purpose. Now it is time to move forward with the hard work of finding a better way. Missouri realtors are...
Okay, again, so we were just listening to the headquarters of Amendment 4 there. This, unbelievably, 81% of voters said no to this tonight. And, you know, Pete, you were saying you predicted 60-40 here, but this is way more than what you had predicted.
Well, listen, I don't think it's going to settle at 80-20. I think it'll come back a little bit. But no, I was in no way confident Amendment 4 or 5 were going to pass in Missouri. There was no reason to be confident if you were on the yes side. When you're explaining in politics, a Sly knows you're probably losing.
Yeah.
And listen, it's also hard to get a yes on things. It's more hard to get a yes than a no. If people don't know what they're voting on, they walk into a ballot box, they don't know what it is, they're going to vote no. That's just inherent. Mm-hmm. And the yes side was doing a lot of explaining with less money, with less resources, and with an unpopular thing to try to push to the people of Missouri. So, like I said, I said earlier, 2 weeks ago, I said on X, I thought it was going to be a double-digit loss for Amendment 4 and 5.
All right, everyone.
No one thought 80-20.
We actually have Adam Hamilton speaking now. Want to go ahead and take it over to his watch party.
She's done such a great job, and this never would have happened were it not for her looking at me in January and saying, I think we need to listen, I think we need to consider this. So thank you all. And to everyone who supported this campaign, volunteering, donating, telling your friends, from the bottom of my heart, thank you, all of you. I would not be standing here were it not for you. This is you, and I get the joy of representing you. Thank you so much. Give yourselves a hand. And I want to say thanks to all of our staff who are here. I'm so grateful and so proud of them. They come from across the United States. And I want to say to those who supported another candidate in this campaign, volunteer, those of you who were, who were anxiously, rooting for somebody else, I want to say I know you're disappointed, and I'm really looking at the camera. I want to say I know you're disappointed, and this is hard. And I want to ask you to give us a chance. I want to simply say our country is broken. You know that. I know that. And it's going to take all of us to heal our nation now. And so, just give us a chance and join us. We're going to be fighting for the same things, and I'm so grateful for you. And I also want to thank the other candidates who've been running in this race. I've been with a number of them in various cities across Kansas. There's some remarkable people, and I'm so grateful for them. It takes courage to put yourself out there and to run for office. And it takes a lot of hard work, and they've been putting that in. And I'm looking forward to working with you as we move forward in this to move Kansas and our country to where it should be. So I want to thank all of you and just say we need you. I want you. Please join us. I want to say this is an unprecedented time in our country. What we see happening in Washington is not normal. And I'm afraid we sometimes hear so many things happening, we just no longer even notice how abnormal things are in Washington. The America that we love is being torn apart by politicians making their living off of keeping us angry and alienated and afraid. Our politics are broken, and that has to change. Recently, I was in Greensboro, Kansas, and a kind woman came to me and she said, look, I feel angry and frustrated when I think of people of the other political party. And I don't want to feel that way. These are some of my neighbors, my family and friends, but I don't want to feel this way towards other people. I want a senator who's not going to divide us further, but try to bring us together. But she also said this, I also hope for a senator who will stand up for what's right and good and true. We began this campaign a few months ago on a listening tour. We visited Dodge City, Oakley, McPherson, Scott City, Wichita, Kansas City, Kansas, and a dozen other cities across Kansas. And we tried to do something Roger Marshall has not been doing, and that is we tried to listen. We tried to listen to Kansas. What do they want in the next senator? What do they want in Washington, D.C.? And we heard so many of the same things. Nearly everybody talked about cost, the cost of living, how hard it is to pay for health care, groceries, how hard it is to pay for gasoline and gas tanks to get to work, or housing. I met a woman in Hutchinson, Kansas, and she came to me after our gatherings privately, and she said, listen, our health insurance now, we no longer receive the subsidies, we make too much money to receive Medicaid, and not enough to, and too much to receive the subsidies. She said, our health insurance is now almost $3,000 a month. That's more than our house payment. And she said, Adam, we're going to cancel health insurance. We won't have it anymore. And she was my age. I'm 62, and I want you to imagine being 62 and canceling your health insurance. because she can't afford it anymore. It's not just health care, though. Between the war in Iran, which many Republicans and most moderate or most folks who are unaffiliated and almost all Democrats oppose, but between the war in Iran and the president's tariffs and the resulting inflation, the average American family is paying $200 a month more for the same things than they were paying a year ago. $200 a month. Now, for many of us, we can deal with that, but if you're living paycheck to paycheck, where do you get the $200 a month? This is hurting real people in Kansas. Families are being left with the impossible choices as Washington really forces them the policies to pay more for less. Across the last years, chaos, corruption, executive orders, legislative plans, and bills that were passed were harming Kansas. I waited for Roger Marshall to speak up. I would have arguments with him in the shower. He wasn't in the shower with me. And I'm like, Roger, speak up. You were not hired by the president to be his personal spokesperson. You were hired by the people of Kansas to speak up for them, to stand up for them. That's your job. And instead, it feels like he's been a yes man all the time. We don't need more yes men in Washington. We need a senator who will speak up for their people, one who listens, tells the truth, who has one guiding principle, and that is what is best for the people of Kansas. Not what does the president want or my party want, but what is best for the people of Kansas. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not a politician. I never thought I would be a politician, especially not at 62. I didn't plan to run for office. I've spent my life as a pastor. And I try to care for people. I try to listen, to try to bring people together. I've tried to serve our community and encourage our people to go out and serve the community and help the community look the way it's supposed to look, to close the gap between the world as it is and the world as it's supposed to be. Now, communities do that. Faith communities do that, and broader communities do that. But sometimes we need the government to help as well. The role of Washington is sometimes going to do the things that we as communities cannot do. But instead of making life easier for people in Kansas, Washington has made it harder for people in Kansas. For tens of thousands of Kansans who no longer afford health insurance. 36,000 Kansans since January of 2025 have lost their health insurance. Now that's a big deal. 10,000 children who no longer receive SNAP benefits. The SNAP benefits, you're not going to get rich on those, but at least it provides macaroni and cheese and applesauce for dinner at night. But 10,000 of our kids in Kansas have lost that under Roger Marshall's watch. When we talk to people, we heard from farmers and ranchers who said life is harder for us than it was before. Small business owners, large business owners, school teachers, adults who are caring for their aging parents, all of this. People saying life has gotten harder for many in Kansas. And over the last year, I kept thinking the same thing. Somebody has to do something. Somebody has to. I kept saying this. Somebody's got to do something. Until January of this last year, when Mohan looked at me and said, maybe you're the somebody. Maybe you should do something. Now, I don't know about you, but many times I looked at Washington and thought, this is wrong. This is not who we are. We simply have to do better. By the way, this isn't a Republican or Democrat thing. All of us, Republicans and Democrats, care about decency and humanity. There are many Republicans I meet who feel like, hey, things are wrong. They're not right tonight. Just before I got here, I talked to a woman in Hamilton, Kansas. And Hamilton, Kansas, her son graduated from high school in a class of 4. And she said, he's a part of our congregation today, and she said, I want you to know I'm a Republican, but I'm with you. I support you. I'm excited about you. I tell everybody I know I'm voting for Adam Hamilton because he's a decent guy who wants to do the right thing in Washington, D.C. I care less about the party name than I care about the people and the character and their competency and what they're going to fight for when they get to Washington. So I think many of us are saying the same thing. We have to do better. As Americans, we're tired of the rhetoric, the erratic changes, the decisions hurting people, again, the chaos and corruption in Washington. And together, Democrats, Republicans, and independents can take back our country. I've described myself as an independent-minded Democrat. I'm standing in the center. And it's the extremes that seem to be trying to pull us apart, but I think there's far more of us who stand in the center saying, look, we've got to work together. Republicans and Democrats, independents, we can and should. We're called to care for each other. We're called to work together to help the world look better, look more like it's supposed to be. Not some mushy, milk-toasty center. It has a backbone. People in the center, they tell the truth. They put people before their party. They put the country before politics. And we remember that government is supposed to work for the people, not us for them. And not just for some of the people, but for all of the people. Not running against our sitting Senator Roger Marshall. Everywhere I go, I'm told he's not listening. People who voted for him have told me the same thing. Not again, not again. People ask me, I've had this asked many times, how can a senator who, when he's not in Washington, D.C., is in Florida, know what people need in Kansas? How does that work? And I think it's a good question. So here's what I know. On Roger Marshall's watch, thousands and thousands of people are doing worse rather than better. People lost their health insurance. Across the state of Kansas, we are the #1 state in the union in danger of closing the most number of rural hospitals. 28 rural hospitals in danger of closing. Why? Because we cut back Medicaid and we cut back health subsidies, which means that people still go to the doctor, they just can't afford to pay for it. And then the doctor and the nurse who are running that one little hospital there are saying, we can't afford to stay here anymore. I mean, we've got to do better than this for our people. All of this has happened on his watch. Now, when Kansans asked him about that, and they said, hey, come on, Roger, tell us why you're doing these things, he ducked out of town halls and he decided not to have them anymore. So here's what I think. If Senator Marshall wants to spend more time in Florida, I think that's awesome. Well, we should help him be able to do that. But I'd like to read. Good for Roger Marshall, and it's going to be good for the people of Kansas, and it's going to be good for the United States. So we have to do better, and we will do better for Kansas children, for Kansas small business owners, for farmers, for ranchers, for everyday people in Kansas, for you and for me. By the way, I was in Holton, Kansas earlier this year, and when I was there, a man came up to me at the end of my talk, and he said, I just want you to know I'm a one-issue voter. And I kind of waited. I thought, okay. And he said, here's my one issue, and I will not vote for anybody who doesn't support this issue. I won't vote for anybody who doesn't believe that we're supposed to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. Now, loving your neighbor includes making sure that kids don't go to bed hungry at night. Loving your neighbor makes sure is sure to count on the people who are living in your midst, who are marginalized or made to feel small or belittled or not belittled, and somebody stands up for them. Loving your neighbor means that you're making sure people don't have to choose between paying their house payment and making sure they can get health care. Loving your neighbor is all of that and so much more. All right, I want to wrap this up with a story of a
Okay, you were just listening there to Adam Hamilton. He is the projected winner for the Democratic candidate for the Kansas U.S. Senate race. So coming up in November, he will face off against Roger Marshall. You see the numbers there. He has 39% of the vote tonight. This is with 56% of the precincts reporting in. So let's now take it back to Sly James and Pete Mundo joining me tonight. And so, gentlemen, when we talk about Adam Hamilton, this is someone who is a well-known person here in the Kansas City community. He is the pastor of the Methodist megachurch, Church of the Resurrection. He is also someone who has had tremendous fundraising success. In the first 2 months of the general election campaign, he raised $3.1 million. Tonight we heard that number went to $4.1 million. So does this fundraising surge that we're hearing about now, does that put Roger Marshall in a vulnerable position?
Well, I think it certainly puts the Kansas Democratic Party in as good of a spot as they've been in to win a U.S. Senate seat, which they haven't done since 1932. That's the last time it happened. So it's crazy to think about, but this may be their best chance for a very long time because of his notoriety around Kansas City, specifically, obviously, on the Kansas side of the state line, how he's built up that church around the entire state, what he's done with it. And then on top of that, you know, it's interesting because 6 years ago, Marshall went up against Barbara Bollier, and she was very well funded, and people thought she could take out a Republican in Kansas for a U.S. Senate race. Didn't happen. In fact, Marshall won by double digits. Different scenario, though. Presidential year, Trump's on the ballot. Those voters come out. The Republican Party is now the party of low propensity voters, which wasn't the case 25 years ago. Will those Trump voters come out for Roger Marshall at the top of a ticket? I don't know. I think it's going to be closer than 6 years ago, but you still have to give the Marshall the edge just because of 100 years of history.
Yeah.
Well, I think that may be true, but I think we're in different times. I would dare say that back when Barbara was running against Roger Marshall, people didn't have a strong negative reaction to the federal government that they have now. This is an unusual scenario. We have a president with some of the lowest favorability ratings, a war that will probably still be raging in November. Although yesterday, I think there was a peace talk. Today, there might be more bombing. Tomorrow, there might be more peace talks. Who knows? But at the end of the day, this whole situation has changed. Number two, Adam Hamilton, a man that I know, like, and respect, it's not just a large church in Kansas. If I'm not mistaken, it's the largest Methodist church in the country. Mm-hmm. And that means that he will get money. What's going to happen is that now there will be lots of national Democratic money flowing in and lots of national Republican money flowing in. And some of it, the Republican money, may come from Texas, where that race is kind of flipped a little bit. And there's a candidate there who constantly shoots himself in the foot, and they may be moving money there. But this is going to be the first time where I think there is going to be enough of a threat from a Democratic candidate to force more money to flow in from the Republican Party and more money to flow in from the Democratic Party. Usually it's just written off.
Well, yeah, but I actually heard something today that national Republicans think Roger Marshall is totally safe. I don't think he's maybe in as much trouble as you do, but I certainly think if he or anyone in his camp is taking this race for granted, they're fooling themselves. I mean, you've got to run this thing like you're behind by 10 points and race across the finish line. If you're Roger Marshall, you cannot take this for granted like you're an incumbent in a state that hasn't voted for a Democrat for Senate in 100 years. You can't do it.
Well, the saying is, and the way I always lived when I was running was, you either run scared or you run unopposed. Those are your only two choices. So I expect him to take it seriously, but I think that with the push by the Democrats to take the Senate, or try to take the Senate and control of that, as well as the House, I think that this may be a different race. And I think the polling may show some differences as well as we get closer to the general.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The polling will matter here.
Absolutely.
Was this result what you expected tonight?
Was for me.
Yeah, I mean, Hamilton was always the heavy favorite in the primary. We knew we were getting Marshall Hamilton, and quick plug, they're both coming on KCMO Talk Radio tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Well, Hamilton Marshall sounds like a band from Iowa.
Well, we also heard Hamilton make a reference to talking to Roger Marshall in the shower, and he had to make sure that he said it was just in his own head, not in real life.
That was interesting.
That would have been a scandal.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, let's kind of move on now from the state politics to more of a local level, especially here in Kansas City. So many people impacted by the property tax situation of 2023. And so because of that, we are going to look at the Jackson County executors race. You've got 6 Democrats running for this office, facing a sole Republican. And looking at that now, it looks like we've got Stacey Lake ahead with 45% of the votes. But again, this is just 17% of the precincts reporting in. So, this is an office that has just been plagued with problems triggered by the 2025 recall of Frank White Jr., obviously, and we talked about the failed property tax assessment. So you have a problem of public trust in this office. You have all 6 of these candidates on the Democrat side running on property taxes. So how do they stand out here?
Well, first thing I wonder is what part of the vote has been counted. I would be willing to bet that the vote at this point has been mostly central Jackson County as opposed to Eastern Jack, and I doubt the Eastern Jack vote is in heavily yet. I think those numbers may flip. But I think the way they stand out is they say, I'm not Frank White. That's how they all stand out.
Yeah.
That's the dividing line right there. The rest of it is it's a free fall. I think the other thing too is that with Dan Tarwater and Manny Abarca, I think that they are too tied to the existing Jackson County administration to get legs. So I think this is going to come down to the 2 relative outsiders in Stacey Lake and Bill Barrett.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's an outsider election coming off of Frank White.
Yeah.
It is. And right away, I agree. I'm not convinced that that's how things are going to hold. But Stacey Lake, Bill Baird, different kind of outsiders.
Yes.
But they have no tie to this disaster of the last few years for the Jackson County legislature. Dan Tarwater's been around it, in and out. Manny Abarca, it's comical to even go there. So it's clearly a push by Jackson Countyans to say, we need something different, we need something new and a fresh voice, and Stacey Lake and Bill Baird are obviously fighting in that lane.
I think that's exactly right, and who knows how it'll end up, but there's a lot more votes to be counted on that election.
Yeah, obviously this is a race that has yet to, it will certainly develop here. What are some of the key things that this next executive, whoever's elected, what do they need to do to rebuild that public trust, besides not be Frank White?
Well, they need to do something other than argue and oppose each other. They need to find something that they can all agree on and work towards. Here's what I would suggest they do. I would suggest that they spend a lot of time trying to figure out what to do with the Truman Sports Complex when the teams are gone, and come up with a cogent plan that they can all stand behind, and to go through a process that looks like they are all thinking about what's in the best interest of their county, as opposed to the constant bickering and infighting that takes place on the Jackson County legislature. That's what it's. One of the problems with Jackson County the whole Jackson County system, is that people ask, what do they do? When you have to ask what an elected official does, that means that there's not enough for them to do. This is a big deal. It's a generational situation with that land out there and what they can do with it. They should spend all their time trying to figure that out and come forth with a plan that people can support and that will generate revenue for the county.
And there's not a lot for really Jackson county governments in general. It's not a heavy lift.
No.
It's not a major city. It's not a state. It's, hey, in the case of Jackson County, figure out the property tax thing in terms of how you collect it, right? Run a sheriff's department.
Take care of some parks and lakes.
Take care of some parks and lakes. Clear the unincorporated roads during the snow season, and that's kind of it.
That's pretty much.
That's it. But they overcomplicate it. And, there's a lot of political ambition with a lot of these folks, and that leads to the messes that we've seen the last few years.
This is a rare opportunity for them to engage in some very Jackson County specific development. And that's a major lift out there. First, you have to come up with how you're going to pay for the remediation and tearing down the stadiums in order to make it plausible to do anything there. And then what are you going to do with it? You can't just leave a big, 50 acres, some number of acres out there. You can't just leave it as a hole in the ground. There's something that can be done. Figure out, maybe you can talk Disney into opening up an extension. Who knows?
You're telling me that the teams aren't going to foot the bill on this?
I'm not selling you anything one way or the other, but let's put it this way. I haven't heard anybody say that.
Well, that's true.
Well, it's clear whoever takes office here is going to have a full plate for sure. All right, we still have much more to get to, but right now we want to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to KCTV 5 Plus, and we are covering everything you need to know for the August primary tonight. One thing we are watching very closely is the Missouri U.S. House District 6 seat. This is the seat being vacated by Sam Graves, and so this is an open race, and right now it looks like on the Republican side it is Chris Stigall that is the front runner emerging from this race with 45% of the vote, and this is with 51% of the precincts reporting. Our Zach Fisher is out at a watch party for Stigall, and Zach kind of set the scene for us there. I mean, are they feeling this excitement? He's pulling ahead here in this race.
No, it's an absolutely correct way to characterize it. You can start to feel the energy build up here. We're in a room full of family members, friends, supporters of his. And you can definitely feel the energy starting to build here over the last half hour or so. It is a full room here in Liberty. I actually want to show you some of the polling results that we got up here on the screen, so I'm going to go bring you over this way. You mentioned, Sharon, we're nearing an 8,000 vote, nearly 9,000, actually 8,000 vote lead here for Stigall over Nathan Willett, the Kansas City Council member. We're nearing that 50% threshold, too, for precincts reporting. So we're not seeing this lead of Stigall's dwindle at all. We're actually seeing the lead be built upon. So you wonder how long it will be until maybe this race is conceded, barring any changes from the polling. But absolutely, there's a buzz in the room right now for Stigall, who has been a conservative radio host for the last 25 years, has been hammering home his message, defending President Trump's policies, whether he is talking about immigration or other related issues, backing the agenda that President ran on and has been implementing so far. But yeah, you could definitely feel the energy, like something's coming here soon.
Yeah, certainly. And are you hearing anything about, when we might actually hear from the candidate himself?
Not at the moment, no, but I talked about that vote margin. We're nearing that 50%. It's a good indicator, right, when you get over that 50% threshold and you're not seeing any of that margin by the number 2, which is Willett, into number 1 there, and you're actually seeing that margin grow. So just looking at the numbers, that general feeling is that you're going to be hearing it sometime soon. And a note here, too, Stigall is not out in the crowd from what I've been able to discern as well. It looks like people are kind of preparing for it. I mentioned there's been a crowd building in. It's kind of gotten to standing room only. So it feels like something's happening soon, just haven't heard officially yet.
Well, when it does, you'll be ready for it. Thank you so much, Zach.
Yeah, thanks, Zach.
Okay, all right, now we
absolutely. Yeah.
Now we want to go ahead and take it over to our Grace Smith, who is covering...
Oh, here in just a minute. We'll get to her.
in just a minute. All right. Well, then, you know what? Let's take a moment here, Katie, and get to the statement from Mayor Quinton Lucas, Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas. And he gave a statement regarding Amendment 4. He says, tonight's vote is a total repudiation of Jefferson City politics, statewide leaders who backed this amendment, and the attempted state control of our voices. Voters of all parties reaffirmed the core common sense principle, and that the majority made up of us, all of us equally, should have had the ability to decide the future of our state. Missouri's leaders are not just far right. They are far out of the mainstream of common sense voters in our state who spend time worrying about making ends meet, building better lives for their families, and not controlling choices, lives, and decisions made by Missouri families and communities. So tonight's result gives hope to Missourians interested in a return to sane, people-centered politics in November 2026 and in 2028, and should be assigned to Missouri Republican leadership to our state, that our state will not tolerate more extremism. And looking at the numbers here, this speaks for itself. An overwhelming 79% of voters saying no to Amendment 4, and that is the amendment that would change the state constitution that would have required a majority of all 8 districts in our state. And this is with just 42% of the precincts reporting in. And with that number right there, 79%, they've pretty much called this.
Yeah, again, these numbers say it all. Now, we're also hearing more from Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe on Missouri Amendment 5. This would have been to phase out income taxes in the state. But again, want to go ahead and pull up these results for just a second here, because again, just like Amendment 4, overwhelmingly, Missouri voters are wanting things to stay the same. They don't want income tax to be phased out and replaced with sales tax. They don't think that we would have the success that Texas, Florida, even Tennessee have with their systems. And again, that's something Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe has been pushing since the moment he took office.
Yeah, and this is a direct statement to the governor, who was personally pushing for this particular amendment. A lot of people have said the problem with this is there were too many questions. There was not clarity in how this would have moved forward. And we heard from Pete Mundo himself, who said this was not pitched to the Missouri voters properly.
Yeah, Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe, want to go ahead and read his statement just to kind of paint a picture. So he says, throughout the conversation on eliminating the state income tax, we made the case that Missouri should think boldly about its future, challenge the status quo, and pursue policies that make our state more competitive. While Amendment 5 did not earn the support it needed, he believes that the work is far from over. Kehoe goes on to say, I remain committed to working with the General Assembly in the years ahead on ways to continue cutting taxes, growing our state's economy, and pursuing conservative policies that help Missouri families keep more of what they earn. And again, we weren't sure exactly how these amendments were going to shake out. And again, with less than half of the votes in, the results are very clear, Sharon.
Yeah. And I mean, this is another indication of that voters are passionate about these two amendments, 4 and 5, because we saw voter turnout is just unbelievable tonight. A lot of people showing up, precincts running out of ballots, and people in line way far after 7 o'clock. So you can see, we don't have the official numbers yet, but we are waiting to see what that voter turnout is expected to be. And I believe Secretary of State Denny Hoskins had predicted 32%. It's likely going to go far past that, I think, but I'm not sure. We'll see.
Yeah. Now, Sharon, we got a couple minutes before we hear from Ty Masterson and Roger Marshall. I want to go ahead and take it to Amendments 1 and 2. This one is to keep the park sales tax here. It's about 0.01%, and this keeps Missouri parks free for residents. And again, overwhelmingly, this has been in place for over 4 decades. Missourians want to see it stay that way.
Yeah, and this is a real interesting one, because this is one that, regardless which part of the political aisle you sit on this tax has passed overwhelmingly. People want to support our parks in the state. And so as you see that here tonight, yes, the result is 82% of people saying yes on Missouri Amendment 1.
Yeah, and again, want to take it next to Missouri Amendment 2. This has sparked so much conversation specifically in Jackson County. So again, this was to whether or not to make the Jackson County assessor elected or appointed. And again, these results speak for themselves.
Yeah,
Sharon.
This is sparked by the recall of Frank White Jr. And we just spoke with Pete Mundo and Sly James about this particular amendment here. There's a lot of public mistrust right now, especially in Jackson County when it comes to government, because there were so many failed property tax assessments in 2023 when people were getting billed for way more than they thought that their property was worth. And so this has been, one of the biggest stories KCTV5 Investigates has covered here for several years now. And so this was a direct voice of saying, Jackson County voters saying, no, we need somebody new here in office, and this needs to be a situation where it is an assessor that is an elected position.
Yeah, and it comes down to voters wanting direct control.
Right.
They don't want a disaster. They don't want to have to wait years for a settlement, lawsuits, and so much uncertainty. So again, they will now choose who serves as the county assessor. And again, this yes vote means that charter counties must now elect the county assessor. Now again, here in just a minute, we're going to go ahead and hear from Ty Masterson and Senator Roger Marshall. I want to go ahead and take it over back to the Kansas side to reset and take a look at those races. Let's go ahead and start with the GOP race for Kansas governor. Here's what we're looking at. Ty Masterson, well ahead of the others.
Yeah, 42% of the vote here, with almost 50% of the precincts reporting in. And so Masterson right now projected to be the winner for the Republican ticket for the Kansas governor race. And again, this is a wide open race with Laura Kelly. She is terming out of her office here. And so we've got 7 Republicans and 3 Democrats that were vying for this office. Looks like Ty Masterson took that Republican ticket. And on the other side, we are looking at, just a moment here,
Cindy
got Cindy
Holscher.
Holscher with 47% of the vote here. And so our Samantha Boring has been at a watch party for Ty Masterson, and we are waiting to hear from the candidate himself. Are we going to go to Sammy? Is she ready?
Yeah, so we are waiting for Ty Masterson to take the stage. As we're waiting, we can kind of break down, check through a few more key ballot measures that Kansans and Missourians have had their eyes on. Want to take it next to this one, Kansas Amendment for Supreme Court justices. We haven't had the chance to break this down just because there have been so many good races tonight.
Yes.
Sharon, but again, look, 64% of voters do not want this change to be made.
Yeah, this would have been a big one because this regards Kansas judicial, the Supreme Court justices. So basically, this is now a appointed position, but it's appointed position with a task force where these candidates are vetted. And so what this amendment would have done would have turned the justices into an elected position, which some say this more reflects the community voice. But as you can see here, the community has spoken and they said no.
Yeah, and something interesting about this, Governor Laura Kelly, who is terming out, that's why we have an open governor's race, she was against this amendment. She felt that the appointment system was fair and put qualified justices in charge of deciphering law in the state of Kansas. And again, majority, well over 50% of voters, and again, over 50% of the votes are in as well.
And this is an interesting concept because what this would have done had this gone through was that this is, you know, when you talk about justices, we've known them to be kind of the overseers of our court and their appointed positions. And so this would have opened it up so candidates would have actually gone out to campaign as a Supreme Court justice, and then voters would have choose. And so many say that this would have politicized the legal system.
Yeah, and again, Ty Masterson should be taking the stage any moment. From the view I have now, they are doing their final mic checks, making sure everything is good to go. And as we wait, we have time to break down 1 or 2 more races. Want to go ahead and take it over to District 4. Mark Alford is the assumed winner. 50% of the votes are in, and 77% are for him to be the GOP nominee for Missouri U.S. House in District 4.
And this was expected. This is not very much of a surprise. Alford has held the seat. He's the incumbent. He was looked at as the front runner going into this seat here. And a Republican side, you had Heather Shelton challenging him, as well as Scott Vera too. And he also had a long list of Democratic candidates challenging him for this seat. Yeah, we had Jordan Herrera, Hartzell Gray. These two were seen as the front runners of this race. Jeanette Cass and also Ashley Rogers too. But you can see there, Jordan Herrera, he took the vote with 31% 31% of the votes, and Hartzell Gray behind at 20%. And so these two will face off against Alfred.
Yeah.
Not these two, rather. Jordan Herrera will face off against Alfred. Sorry, a lot of talking tonight.
Yes, yeah. And Sharon, I want to go ahead and take it now to District 5. Again, Rick Bratton is currently carrying the race with 44% of total votes. It looks like U.S. Senator Roger Marshall is taking the stage.
Yes.
I want to go ahead and take it over to him now.
What a great night this is. What a great, and this night belongs to Ty and Marlo Masterson. How about Ty? And I say it's a great night for Kansas because Ty is going to deliver for Kansas. He's going to bring back prosperity and security for all Kansans. He's going to make your family safe. He's going to bring down the cost of living. And most importantly, he's going to protect your Kansas values. So I'm so excited to have, I feel like this is like we're running mates here. Masterson and Marshall running here, fighting out the Democrat Socialist Party, the big government Democrat Socialist Party of America. So it's exciting to be up here with him tonight and to celebrate, and a big congratulations to all of his team members. Hundreds of people gathered here today, but hundreds, thousands of volunteers have been out there and worked their tail off and won this primary. Look, we know that primaries feel like a family fight, that it feels like, it's this Republican on Republican violence. So it's time to put that behind us. Congratulations to all the other Republican candidates that were out there working so hard as well. But tonight, at midnight, we're going to strike the clock and move on and take on the Democrat Socialist Party. So again, nothing but a big congratulations to Ty and Marlo. We're so proud of you. We love you both, and we look forward to your leadership for the great state of Kansas. So now I get the honor of introducing your next speaker tonight, all the way from the great county of Leavenworth County, a good friend of all ours, your next Lieutenant Governor, Jeff Flint. Jeff, come on up here. I would tell you, I agree with our ability to where we sit taking this race, how it played out. And I think we can send a very Okay, looks like we're having some audio issues with the Ty Masterson campaign location. But yes, you are watching KCTV 5 Plus. This is our election special tonight. And what an election night it has been. So as we wait for the audio to come back from the campaign headquarters for Ty Masterson, we want to go ahead and take a look at the U.S. House race for Missouri District 5. This is, of course, Representative Emanuel Cleaver's seat. So these are the Republican side
candidates running here, and it looks like Rick Bratton is taking about 44% of the vote here. This is with 61% of the precincts reporting in. So certainly this could change, but probably not with 44% of the vote. And you see behind him, the candidates are quite a ways back. And so right now I want to go ahead and bring in Dr. Deborah Leiter again. And Dr. Leiter, what we spoke about earlier when you were with us was Trump endorsements, the president's endorsements, because not only has the president endorsed Rick Bratton here, but also Chris Stigall, Ty Masterson. These are candidates that are clearly pulling ahead in this race tonight. Many of them declared winners. And so it seems like what this says is that, yes, the president's endorsement does matter.
Absolutely. I think that, there's been a lot of question about how much it would matter with the president's approval ratings being down, but it's worth noting that while President Trump's approval ratings are down, they're still really high with Republican voters. And I think these results show us that the president's endorsements really matter, that when voters are making hard decisions, they, especially for these sort of national level races, they really care about what the president's saying.
Okay, we want to hold that thought for a moment because we got audio here from Ty Masterson, so we want to go ahead and listen in.
Thank you. Honestly, it's to my kids. Yeah, we have 6 adult children, and they are just amazing individuals. And it is hard to put up with some of the garbage that rolls through politics, right? I mean, it's just so special. Thank you. A couple of them we went through. We had an incident where the trans crowd got some of their cell phone numbers, right? And we're just sending nasty, vile stuff. And 2 of them, God bless them, they answered, said, "That's not my dad at all. I'm gonna be praying for you. You need Jesus." Right? So I was like, going, don't answer that. I mean, that's gonna confirm that they have the right number. So don't do that. But they got this. So my kids, because you don't wish your struggles on your children. Right? I mean, and I know I chose to step in that arena and fight for my kids, but my kids didn't choose to fight. So I'm just so thankful to them and what they've chosen to do and proud of what they're doing, raising my grandkids. Extra special thank you to my mother. Where is Mom? She's here somewhere. There's my mom. I'd let that go on forever. She deserves it. It is, she not only put up with me and my brothers, right? So 4 boys, and she ruled that house. But it was the strongest woman I've ever met. Second one right here. So,
good cover.
No, hey, wasn't even covered. It was like, yeah, it was just, the way she raised it, her and my dad. I wish my dad could see this. He was just such an amazing example of a steady plodder, worked hard, taught us to love Jesus and work. And she was right there beside him. And she's been sending me verses every day and encouragement, right? Going through this fight, and especially this last week where, your opponents dump $1 million on your head to say negative things. And, although I did her verses more recently, it's been fun. It's been from Psalms like David, like smite my enemy and humiliate them. I was like, I love you, Mom. Right? I'm still the little boy, right? She's taking care of me. So that's the family. Then I'll get to so another big thank you to this gentleman right here, Jeff Klemp. Yes. Well, yes. You guys don't know what you're getting here. I mean, this truly is a 2-for-1 special. This is, you guys, this is 2 workhorses. I've never been afraid to hitch my wagon to somebody that's stronger, faster, better, smarter than me, right? Because I want to go too. Let's do this. And this is this guy. I mean, this 5th generation Kansas businessman, family man. I mean, he's got everything it takes to help us move day one. And that's the whole goal, right? We don't just hold a title. We want to change things. We want to make things better in this state. So thank you to Jeff Klemp and to Joni for putting up with it too, right? To letting you do that. I should probably thank my campaign team. They They worked hard. I mean, like every day. I mean, it was just every day doing something. And thank you for doing it the right way. We did. By the way, I know lots of negative garbage goes out. From the campaign, we did do nothing negative. I mean, there were some supportive PACs and things that were out there and so that's the challenge, right? There's always outside entities that want to be helpful, and you're so grateful they're there, and they put resource behind you. But we've got to come together in this state. So they ran it the right way, and I think you see the fruits of that, right? Because there's so many negative things that went, but the win with the margins we won against that, I think that is a tribute to our campaign team. I can't go without thanking President Trump. So, he's so fun, right? Can't thank him for his friendship and his support and his endorsement. On that call the other day, he said we love each other. I thought that was awesome. It's like, I love you, man. This caught me off guard a little bit, but it was. He loves this country. He loves this country. I was just, when I got to first meet him in the Oval last year, it was just like, hey, do you want to see the Declaration of Independence? Yes, I do. Yes, I do want to see that. Because he just was so excited to show us, what he just loves this country in a way that I think he's one of those guys that, occasionally God raises somebody up that kind of becomes bigger than themselves, right? And does more than a single human can do. And I think he's that guy. And I also want to thank Roger Marshall. He's a champion. He has been a champion for Kansas. He's been a great friend of the president, which was helpful in our communication and the things he's been able to do for us. So as we move into this next battle, get out there and be part of this guy's team, and let's get across the line with him, because I shudder to think we get a Democrat senator in this state. That party has lost their minds. So, so anyway, get out here, because Roger's been tremendous. So honored to call him friend and have his endorsement. And everyone who supported another candidate, right? I don't know there's too many in this room, but for those that may be watching from somewhere else, those that did, this is a team sport. And so I understand, right? I thank you for being part of the process, and being just out there and active. I related to growing up with four brothers. This is what I related to, right? It's a family fight. We would get in some knockdown, drag-outs, me and my brothers, right? Particularly my older one. He's here tonight, Jeff. He's back there somewhere. He's like, yeah, here he is. He's that guy.
Is he littler than you?
Oh, he's my older brother by about 18 months or so, but I was a little fat kid, so I was the big kid, and he was. So we'd go at times, and we would just till he hit puberty, then he kicked my rear end. So, anyway, that's what I related to, right? We might have a disagreement and a fight, but it was in the family. The very next day, if somebody came against the family, we were going to win. We were going to join together and win. And that happened more than once, like in reality, where we might be fighting one day and the next day we're fighting for us, right? We can have a disagreement, but we would die for each other. And then that's what I'm asking. Those that supported another Republican candidate, we need to come together, because the real opposition is the Democrats. They literally have lost their minds. This party of open borders and mail-in elections and fraud and high energy prices. It's like, and you can't have anything else but high cost of energy with them, because they worship climate change, right? So we have to come together to change the face of Kansas moving forward. Really, the stakes haven't been higher because of where we're at now with the current party. There used to be reasonable, even pro-Second Amendment, even some pro-life Democrats. My grandmother was one. Most of her life was a Democrat. By the time she passed away, though, she told me if she ever caught me voting for one, she'd bend me over her knee. I mean, it was just because it was like, her big line was, you kind of hear, she goes, I didn't leave them, they left me, right? The things have changed, and that's where we're at. And by the way, it looks like Senator Holscher is going to win the race tonight on the Democrat side. Woo-wee. This. You guys don't understand. Laura Kelly called her an extremist. I mean, this is you want to get to a whole new level, right? I mean, that was the best marketing campaign I've ever seen. Laura Kelly, middle of the road, because she wasn't in the middle of the road. I mean, she was kind of bumping up against the fence in the left ditch, and she called Cindy extreme. So this is, I mean, you get Cindy Holscher, you get higher taxes, you get continued decline in schools, you get boys competing in women's sports, you get men in women's bathrooms, right? You get a higher cost of everything. So this is important for us to unite. So for those of you out there that supported another candidate, I'm just asking you to join us and be part of this fight, because it is real, and it's across the nation. And so thank you. Please come join us. The message was clear from Kansas tonight. They want lower taxes, safe communities, right? They want opportunities for our children, because that's how we keep people here. We have to have opportunity. I am incredibly blessed that all 6 of my kids are choosing to raise their families in Kansas. It is. Thank you for that. And I say all the time across the trail, that is why I ever engaged in politics. Because I'm so conscious of the fact that my clock's timing out. But I've got little clocks starting that I so deeply care about that I have to make Kansas a better place to live, work, and raise a family. And that's for your kids too, right? And your grandkids. So the goal, we're going to make Kansas the best managed state in the country. We're going to be leaders in agriculture and energy and business. And we're going to go after affordability. Nobody should be taxed out of their house or off their farm or out of their business. And we're going after all of that. And we need affordability. We need young mothers not worrying about grocery and gas prices. Small business worried about making payroll. But we need to make sure that Kansas is the model in the nation. And we've been in a very adverse position with the federal government, with the Trump administration, right? As President Trump, I think he wakes up every day trying to put more money in your pocket and make us a safer nation. And, he's out there, he wants investment in America. He wants things made in America. It's one thing we hit it off on. I want that investment in Kansas. I want things made in Kansas. I want opportunities for all our children, because that's what keeps them here. And that's what changes the face of this state. So I just can't thank you guys enough for being part of this race. And we'll continue.
Okay, so you have just been listening to Ty Masterson there. He's obviously taken the GOP ticket for the race for Kansas governor. Right now, I want to go ahead and bring in Dr. Deborah Leiter and Pete Mundo joining me back here. So this is shaping up to be a very interesting race going into the midterms here.
100%. I think, we definitely had an expectation that Ty Masterson was going to win, but it was really important for him to do so, and I think do so pretty handily, and he did tonight. And now we're starting to see exactly how he's shaping his election going forward. So I think we have the potential for a pretty bruising general election race in Kansas coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Cindy Holscher was the progressive in this race of the 3 Democratic candidates, and Ty Masterson already tonight in the speech is going after her track record, saying that Governor Laura Kelly called her too far to the left, basically, while she was in the legislature. So that's going to be the thing that Masterson hits home on, these next couple of months. And then on the other side, Cindy Holscher is probably going to lean into, the Trump thing that obviously works in a primary. But we'll see how that plays out in a gubernatorial election in a year when obviously Republicans traditionally, as the party with power, will struggle. So that's where this is going. It's going to be Cindy hitting Ty over Trump and Ty hitting Cindy over being too far left for Kansas, and we'll see where things fall in November.
Let's talk about this. You brought this up, which is the endorsement by President Trump, obviously, to Ty Masterson here. The other one was Rick Bratton, an 11th hour endorsement. So is this saying that an endorsement by the president matters when it comes to these primaries?
Well, I think it does, but it's interesting because President Trump had lost 3 endorsements in GOP primaries for governor in the last really few weeks. Iowa, his candidate didn't win. Georgia, his candidate didn't win. And Oklahoma, his candidate did not win. So governor's races are different. But Ty had Trump. He had Americans for Prosperity. He had Kansans for Life. He had a lot of key endorsements lined up behind him, not just the president of the United States. But Trump's his record is really almost perfect as it relates to candidates that are going to D.C. House candidates and Senate candidates is where he really obviously thrives. But listen, my guess is he saw a poll yesterday. It had Bratton up, and he just figured I'd chalk this one up and put it in the win column. Like, no one really knows, right? I mean, unless you're on social media, you can't send out mailers. You can't make commercials in the last 24 hours. It's really just a way to, I think, stack up the win column a little bit, which is fine, but I don't think it makes a big difference at the 11th hour like that.
It is interesting. There are 2 times that people make a decision about who they're going to vote for. One is 3 months before the election, when the candidates are announced, and the other time is the day of the election.
Yeah.
People are really interesting. And so for those last-minute voters who are on the fence, this can matter. But for a lot of people, they've known whom they were going to vote for from day one. And so how much it matters is always a question. But certainly we are going to hear quite a bit about the power of these endorsements. And, kind of on the other side, it also shows you the risks of endorsements, because the lack of an endorsement for Holscher is going to be something that's going to come up for the rest of her election as well. So these kind of nominations and endorsements are kind of a risky strategy.
And I'm intrigued to see if the moderate Democrats who were behind Laura Kelly and Ethan Corson come home to Cindy Holscher. I mean, I think that they will, because in the end they'll say to themselves, well, I'll take a split government in Topeka anyway, even if Cindy Holscher is maybe more liberal than I would like. But what are they going to do? Vote for Ty Masterson and give the Republicans control of the governor's mansion, the House, and the Senate? I don't think that's going to happen. So I don't think Cindy Holscher is going to have a problem in the end getting Democrats in Kansas who voted for Laura Kelly twice to come back home to her.
And you can see right here, Cindy Holscher right now being officially declared the winner for her party. Now, as we go forward into the midterms here, one question I have is, Laura Kelly has held this position for so long. She's being termed out here. With this race going forward, Ty Masterson, who is a very strong candidate, but then you have Cindy Holscher here, who's very far left. This could really change the political landscape for our state here.
Absolutely. I mean, we are going to see either a divided government, where we did have a veto-breaking legislature, but still, certainly, there were plenty of times when the governor vetoed, when the governor made decisions that directed Kansas one direction or the other. And so we could really see quite a change come November.
Okay, I'm going to interrupt here real quick, because we are actually hearing from the winner herself here, Cindy Holscher.
And how about defeating that amendment? Thank you, Kansas! I am so very honored to be here. I'm just, taking it all in, all of these beautiful faces, all the work we've done for the past several months. My parents are right there. My grade school teacher. I didn't start this out the way I was supposed to, but like I said, it's just a lot to take it. Good evening, everyone. I'm Senator Cindy Holscher, and tonight I am honored to stand before you as your Democratic nominee for governor of Kansas. First and foremost, I want to thank the other candidates who ran this primary. It takes a lot to step forward. These are the worst of times to run for office, but there's never been a time when we need great candidates more. So I just always honor and thank those who step forward to run for any office, because these are tough times, and it takes a lot. So for the other candidates in this primary, I say thank you for your commitment to our state, for your willingness to run and your willingness to serve. Our party is stronger because of the debates we had, and I look forward to working right alongside them in the months ahead, starting tomorrow morning. Because I'm from the farm and I'm the daughter of a Marine, we don't take much time off, do we? There's work to do. And the truth is this: we need every single one of us in this state to come together. Kansans from every part of the state, Democrats obviously, but we're going to need Republicans and independents too. We're going to need everyone who understands how high the stakes are and how important it is to win in November. And let's talk about those stakes. Over a year ago, I looked around, I saw the writing on the wall. I knew Ty Masterson would likely lead the Republicans and get the nomination. It's okay to say, I heard somebody say yuck. I mean, I guess. And after 10 years in the House and Senate, I knew what would happen if he did. Because Ty Masterson as governor would drag us back into the Brownback years. And even further. It would be politics as usual with a side of MAGA extremism. He'd weaken our schools. He'd hand out our tax dollars to special interests. He'd fight to make abortion illegal and block Medicaid expansion and try to push our only Democratic Congress member out of office. We know he'd do these things because we've seen his agenda as Senate president and the things he's already done. And now he's got Donald Trump behind him and the whole MAGA apparatus lined up behind him. Topeka under Masterson would leave the regular people even further behind. And regular people deserve far better than that. Regular people deserve someone who will put them first and fight for them every single day they're in office. And I know a thing or two about regular people, because I grew up on a farm. My grandparents were tenant farmers, the poorest of the poor. My dad was a construction worker for 37 years and a union member. My mom worked at the school that I attended, drove the school bus, and did maintenance. I come from a family of veterans. My oldest brother served in the Army. My dad was a Marine, and nearly all of my uncles and cousins served. My parents worked hard to give me a better life, and thanks to them, I became a first-generation college graduate. And like I mentioned, they're here tonight. Please, round of applause. My husband and I came here to Kansas more than 25 years ago because we believed in the promise of this state. We settled here, we raised our 3 incredible children here, and put down our roots. But by the time our kids got into public school, the Brownback experiment was in full swing. Governor Brownback was gutting our public services to pay for the tax cuts for the wealthy. And one day, Sarah and I were shopping at Target, and we saw one of her teachers there working. A teacher working a second job on the weekend. And when I explained to Sarah what was going on, why her teacher was working on the weekend at Target after being all week at school, Sarah looked at me and she said, "That's wrong. You go fix that." So if you all like me and you like what I'm doing, thanks, Sarah. So that's how I got started in politics. I ran for the state house, the legislature in 2016 because my own representative at the time was leading the charge to defund our schools. I didn't know if I could win, but I did it. And I served 2 terms in the House and then crossed over to the Senate. And when I got to Topeka, I co-founded the Women's Bipartisan Caucus. With my friend across the aisle, Representative Stephanie Clayton, who was a Republican at the time. We worked together, Republicans and Democrats. We rolled up our sleeves and we got it done. And we put together the bill that ended the Brownback experiment and got this state back on track. I have a history of fighting for results for regular people, and that's what we're going to have to do now more than ever. I've proven that I know how to win these fights and move Kansas forward. And I am proud to say I ran on that record all year and tonight, and with the help of so many of you, we won! Now, I'm not going to lie to you. These next few months, they're going to be hard. We're going to be up against the Koch network, right? Dark money. We're going to be up against PACs, corporate special interests, billionaires, and donors who think they can buy a victory in November. Donald Trump's MAGA funders are going to pour everything they have into getting Ty Masterson elected and dragging Kansas backward. We are going to fight to make sure that does not happen. And when I say we are going to have to fight, I mean all kinds of people. If you voted for me, we need you. If you voted for Ethan Corson, we need you. If you voted for Kurt Skoog, we need you. And here's the thing. If you voted for Scott Schwab or Vicki Schmidt, we need you. And if you didn't vote, we really need you. This is everybody's fight. It's a fight for our state, for our schools, for our rights, and for our democracy. I'm ready for it. Are you? Because the choice in November is about what kind of Kansas we want to live in. Do we want our schools to give our kids their best shot? Or are we going to look at a future where kids are left behind? Do we want health insurance and health care? Or do we want to see more rural hospitals close under Masterson? Do we want a Kansas where people can afford a home and get ahead? Or do we want to see the continuation of things getting worse and people can't afford things? Do we want a Kansas that invests in working families or one that gives tax breaks to people who don't need them while the rest of us struggle? I know what kind of Kansas I want. As your governor, I'm going to fight every day to make life here more affordable. We're going to fully fund our public schools, general education, and special education. We're going to protect Social Security and Medicare. And we will finally expand Medicaid and make health care more affordable. I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, or an independent. Our government should have your back, and we should look out after each other. Because that's what Kansans do. We take care of each other, and we look out for our neighbors. But if we're going to do it, we have to win again in 3 months. So it is time we come together. Now, I know that sometimes families and friends disagree about politics. Sometimes feelings run a little hot.
All right, you were just listening there to State Senator Cindy Holscher. She emerges as the winner for the Democratic ticket for Kansas governor. And so now we want to go ahead and take it to another race that we've been watching closely, and this is the District 6 race for Missouri. This is the seat for Sam Graves. And it looks like on the Democratic ticket tonight, it looks like Chris Stigall emerges as the winner. And we are at a watch party for him tonight. And he has taken the podium here. So let's go ahead and listen in.
People who have been my right and left arm through these last 4 months, who have quite literally been at every function, every event, and every trip, and every detail. I want to say to my campaign manager, David Brown, thank you. David, where are you? There he is. And she ran herd on the schedule. She is our operations director. And again, she kept all the trains on the tracks. Brennan Kimball. Brennan? There he is. There he is. David and Brendan became like my fifth children in a way. It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate it. I also want to thank the incredible work of my friends Brittany and Mike Matusik, Mike the sign guru, and Brittany, who did so much work helping fundraise for us. Buffy and Matt Smith, dear friends of mine for a very, very long time. Buffy, Matt, thank you so much. Yes. Brian Nichols, who lives out east, and he helped us so much in the eastern part of the district. You know, this is 33 counties, this district, and as much as I would love to tell you I knew every one of them like the back of my hand, I got a lot to learn still. I've seen some, for instance, I learned there's a Philadelphia, Missouri. I did not know that, but I do now. So I want to say thank you, although he's not here tonight, to Brian Nichols and Aaron Baker, who is here tonight. Aaron is the king of the East. I think he's probably going to run one of these days for something out there, mayor of something. Yeah, but Aaron, thank you so much for your help as well. And the guy who basically is, he was the overseer, the grand poobah of the entire operation. He's here tonight, Sam Cooper. Sam, I don't know if he's here in the room, but Sam, yeah, back there, Sam. Samuel, thank you. Sam was Cool Hand Luke through the whole thing. And it was great to work with him and learn so much. And quickly, I will say there were many state representatives and senators and mayors and county commissioners and sheriffs that chose to endorse this campaign, and that's tricky. I've learned in politics it's very, very tricky. A lot of people don't like to walk the plank in primaries. They like to hold back. So to those of you who did, and you know who you are, and I intend to reach out to each of you and let you know personally how much I thank you, but you know who you are, and I thank you so much for doing that. That meant the world to me, to have the gravitas of office holders in the 6th Congressional District whose counties and cities and towns respected them. To have your endorsement lent credibility to me when I would go into communities and they say, now who are you again? So I really appreciate that. I also want to say to some families and supporters very specifically here, some dear people and friends of mine, the Swaffords, Jackie and Reason Swafford. Are you there? You are. Jackie and Reason Swafford are two of the most incredible people that you're ever going to meet. And she's rolling on this. I've known that young woman since I was like a toddler, I believe. And she and Reason are just tremendous, and I can't thank you enough. The Meisels, thank you, my friends, so much for your work. To the Smiths, the Yoders, the Hursts, the Hegemans, the Popes, the Hutzlers, the Bonds, the Hurlberts, the Guernseys, as well as the Richies, the Athas, Joe Pruitt, Kyle White, the Baker family, and again, I apologize if I have missed any names. I will reach out to each and every one of you to thank you, but all of those folks and so many more, this takes an unbelievable number of people who have donated their time and their energy and their efforts to march and walk in parades in downpours, to door knock, to wear those red shirts and walk through fire and rain and all kinds of stuff to win this thing for us. It's as humbling as anything I've ever experienced in my life. I have never, ever experienced the kind of kindness, the prayers, the generosity, and the support that we received as a family and as a campaign from all of you who donated. And I hope you'll give all of yourselves a round of applause for all the work you did, because you deserve it. You're excellent.
Okay, there you were just hearing from Chris Stigall. He is the winner of Missouri U.S. House District 6. This is Sam Graves' seat. I'm going to go ahead and bring in Dr. Deborah Leiter again. And Dr. Leiter, so you have Chris Stigall, who has won this seat, and then close behind him was Nathan Willett, who actually just called Stigall to concede in this race. Let's talk about this. Now, Chris Stigall took this vote. However, Nathan Willett, was the reason why he was not able to succeed in this is because he didn't have a strong enough voice with the agriculture community, because when you look at this district, it is heavily ag.
I think that's exactly it, is that even though these district boundaries have been redrawn, this is a District 6 that still mostly looks like the previous District 6. And Sam Graves was a really strong voice for rural Missouri, and I think that what we see is that those voters were looking for a similar kind of voice, and that even though Kansas City Metro is part of that district, an insufficient number of them were there to really change the tenor of this race. And so I do think we can see that in many ways we're going to get a similar ideological perspective to Sam Graves in the winning candidate tonight.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this shapes up, because Nathan Willett is very KC-Mo. He's very urban core, right?
Absolutely. And I think that he actually did incredibly well, given the fact that most of District 6 is not, right? So the fact that he's even putting the numbers up there shows that those voters are turning out, but District 6 is still very heavily rurally oriented.
Yeah. And let's go ahead and take it back to the Kansas governor race, because we were just talking about that before we heard from Cindy Holscher and Chris Stigall here. Now, this race is going to be really interesting, because you're looking at Ty Masterson, who is emerged as the GOP ticket, on the GOP ticket, and then Cindy Holscher, she has taken the Democratic ticket here. You have two people here who are pretty much at the far ends of their spectrum. So this is going to definitely change the political landscape here in Kansas somehow, some way here.
I think there's no question that whoever wins, we're going to see some important changes come November and the following year. If Ty Masterson wins, we're going to see policy move to the right in Kansas, and probably pretty far to the right. There are some restrictions on what the governor and the state legislature can do given the Kansas Constitution, but we're definitely going to see policies move in a rightward direction. If Holscher wins, then we have a Democrat winning, which we currently have, but a very different kind of Democrat, potentially than Laura Kelly. And that's going to be a much more challenging thing to work with the legislature. However, it's also going to be require the legislature to moderate. And so this is going to be really interesting to see how these two candidates try to appeal to the moderate voters that are critical to both of them succeeding. Whoever wins, those independents and those moderate voters who sit on the fences, whoever gets the most enthusiasm coming in the fall, they're going to be the winner. And these are both candidates who are going to have a challenge in really appealing to those moderate voters.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think, because would you say maybe Ty Masterson has the uphill climb here, because you have Laura Kelly, who has held this seat for so long, who's a female, and so many believe that a female should be in this office.
You know, it's going to be interesting to see how that really matters. There's relatively few women governors if we look across history, but they tend to be quite popular when they're on office. We tend to see women gubernatorial leaders have higher approval ratings on average. On the other hand, so here we see Holscher having an advantage of saying continuing that tradition. On the other hand, we do have a state that in general has been tacking to the right for at least presidential and national level elections. And so most sort of polls and sort of forecasting models put this as a likely Republican turnover, but this is a very different dynamic with another Democratic woman in place as a challenger.
Certainly, it'll be interesting to see how this one shapes up. It'll be definitely interesting moving into midterms for sure. All right, now let's stay in Kansas and let's talk about something which we haven't been able to talk about yet, which is Kansas Amendment 4, and that is moving from having Supreme Court justices being an appointed position to an elected position. Voters in Kansas said absolutely not to this one. 62% of voters voting no on this. Now, you and I were talking about this, Dr. Leiter, and you said this was actually a surprise to you.
Absolutely. When we ask voters kind of at a national level in general how they think judges should be chosen, if they're given the option between elections and appointment, they tend to choose elections, and elections at overwhelming numbers. If we survey, say, the national population, about 70% of people say, let's elect judges. So this result is quite surprising. Usually, given the opportunity to add elections, voters say yes. And so I think this really shows us how much campaigns matter for these kinds of ballot items.
Yeah, and it's speaking on that particular note, because what has been so overwhelming tonight, again, showing this amendment at 62%, but not just this one, the Kansas governor race, amendments 4 and 5 on the Missouri side, the voter turnout for tonight's primary election was, I mean, you could almost use the word unprecedented here. The biggest surprise of the night.
There's no question. This is absolutely not what people were expecting. In fact, actually, sometimes we do see ballot items placed on things like primary elections because there's an expectation of lower turnout. And these issue items, along with some very interesting and competitive primaries, brought voters out. They are ready to vote. They are excited to vote. And if this is the turnout in a primary, I cannot imagine what the turnout in the general election will be. It is surprising. And once again, I think that a lot of that comes down to all of the campaigning that went around Amendment 4 and 5 in Missouri and Amendment 1 in Kansas, that this really motivated voters, that they were interested and willing to show what they wanted about the institutions in these two states.
And it also seemed like not only just the campaigns worked, but the endorsements seemed to work for these candidates too.
Yeah, I think voters were looking for additional information. We have a combination of high spending across a lot of these campaigns, lots of money being spent already, and we haven't even gotten there yet, and lots of endorsements, lots of coverage, and that really mattered. Not infrequently, we have this expectation that voters don't pay attention to these things. And the elections today and the turnout today show us that's not true. If you give voters information, they'll respond, they'll come out. And I think that's a great sign for Missouri and Kansas that the voters here are paying attention.
Yeah, the voters are paying attention. It was just an incredible election night. And we had several surprises here. So to you, watching this as a political expert, what were the ones that really stuck out to you?
I have to say it was the ballot items in both Kansas and Missouri. I was expecting them to be a much closer kind of nail-biter fight, and they both weren't. I especially was surprised by the income tax vote. Usually voters, especially in Missouri, when given a chance to cut taxes, they take the opportunity to do so. It's usually the safe bet. So the fact that that was defeated was quite surprising to me. And add to that the judicial elections, given a chance to elect judges, they didn't. And it's interesting, on the Missouri side, asked a question about whether assessors should be elected, they said yes. So lots of interesting surprises. Voters are taking these things piecemeal and making different evaluations depending on what they think is important and what they think is right or wrong.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely saw that in this election. And up next is the midterms. And, you know, we always talk about, well, what do we learn from, you know, the event before, which in this case, of course, is the primaries. What did we learn from this? What are our takeaways here going into the midterms?
I think the biggest takeaway of the night is that we should expect a lot more people showing up in November than we were even expecting. I think this might be a record-breaking midterm just given these primary elections. Voters are paying attention. They are ready and raring to vote. I also think that to a certain extent we saw, in some cases, more ideologically extreme candidates winning than maybe we were expecting, that we're going to see some pretty stark choices. Although, for example, on the St. Louis side, we did see some more moderates winning. I think the key takeaway is I think everyone's expecting this election to have one clear message. This is the option for the Democrats. This is the option for Republicans. And I just don't think we're seeing that. I think we're seeing a really complex and more localized decision-making by voters. And that makes these dynamics really interesting and really hard to predict.
Yeah, it is going to be so interesting. And before we go here, we want to talk about the 4 questions that Kansas City voters were faced with tonight, and that is the $100 million. Question 1 is the $100 million allocation for assisted living, I believe. No,
it's affordable housing.
Affordable housing. That's what it is. Affordable housing that passed at 81%. The question 2 also passed at 68%. This was for repairing city buildings. Yep. And question 3 that also passed as well. And this one was, help me out, Katie.
On the east side, tax renewal.
There we go.
And then 4 and 5 is all about water system and sewer system improvements. And again, all of these really pretty much passed with flying colors, not too close in any races here tonight.
So just an incredible election night tonight. And Dr. Leidy, we really want to thank you for joining us here tonight. And our election coverage does not end here. KCTV5 News at 10 is next, and we will have full team coverage there along with more analysts and just everything you need to know about the results going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you both again for sitting down here on KCTV 5 I know we've got a lot of viewers right now on TikTok and YouTube. Go ahead and head over to Channel 5 or that KCTV 5 app for extended coverage. You will not want to miss KCTV 5 News at 10. Thanks again for tuning in.
Night.